Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Hollywood Matt Connolly with the Double Biceps Botha's favourite moment. It is in the contract. He wrote the contract. Apparently, it is in the fine print. He snuck it in there because he loves seeing me do that every single episode. We are welcome once again, to the Daily Combat Podcast. This is episode number 50. We have reached 50. We are halfway to a century, and you are a special guest for today. This is the currently number two ranked South Australian
number two right and number one left.
It's very contentious about the number one left.
We'll get to that.
It is, in fact, Lasni, Botha, all the way from South Africa.
Actually, I live in Adelaide now.
You live in Adelaide? No. Oh, you came all the way? I thought you were flying back and forth.
I just took the bus.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right, fair enough. You're originally from South Africa.
Absolutely.
Now moved all the way over here, not flying back and forth weekly as we thought you were. But obviously that lie has been exposed. So, yeah, welcome to the show, and thank you for coming on. We have a big event coming up on the 27th of August, the Garage Wars 2.0, held in Melbourne. There's a whole bunch of Australian arm wrestlers going to be on that card. Interested to hear the thoughts of the number two ranked right and then contentiously number one left arm wrestler in the state, of what you think of some of the matchups that will be going down.
Yes.
Yeah, so well, maybe we'll get a little bit of your history first in terms of your arm wrestling background. Obviously, you were training with Terence Phillips. Terence, what's Terence's surname?
It's not Terence and Phillip. It's not Southpaw.
No, Terence
Opperman.
Opperman, that's all. I'm sure he'll love that if he sees this. Yes, Terence Opperman, one of the best arm wrestlers in the Southern Hemisphere. And you, was it your first person that you were like, this is one of the first people I'm going to be training with?
No, he hated me, actually.
Oh, he still does.
I got a lot of death threats on Facebook and other places. Oh. Guys were phoning me. They got my number somehow and they started calling me.
I was giving it out, sorry.
Because, because I learned about arm wrestling through YouTube. In 2012, and then but I was far away. I was working as a graduate geologist in the mine, so I didn't have anybody. I would literally, all the rock drill operators were a bunch of big buff black guys, and I would just bribe them with watermelon and chicken, and then I would just arm wrestle them on the core trays, and literally KFC was like, boys, beat me, get KFC. So,
oh wow.
Every Friday was KFC day, and that was my first year of arm wrestling training, just having the rock draw operators hang on me.
So you'd seen it on YouTube, and you were like, hey, I want to give this a go.
I didn't know it was a regulation sport. I literally was sitting in my room one day, bored. Sometimes you get bored on the internet. And then I typed in world's strongest arm wrestler in YouTube, and then John Brzezink's videos popped up, and I was like, this guy isn't even big. Well, how is he this strong? And then, but Wikipedia.
Yeah.
And Wikipedia from 2009 all the way to 2012 still said, this is the strongest guy ever.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought, okay, that's amazing. If he can be that strong, let me give it a go. Because you remember arm wrestling in school, I was pretty decent. At school, I was always beating bigger guys. And I thought, maybe there's something to it. But I always thought I was cheating because I would always my dad had this thing. He told me, he was my first arm wrestling coach. And he's like, just put your hand behind your head and gently touch the back of your hair. And so you concentrate on not exerting yourself too much. And you have to stay calm. And he actually taught me a little bit of technique. It was like, well, if you pronate, if you close your hand on top of him, you're taking some muscles out of the game. But I didn't understand any of that and whatever.
Right. So you just used to touch the back of their head and
yeah. Anyway, it just never worked. But aggression is the way, obviously. So no lightly touching of anything, slamming and grabbing and screaming.
Yeah.
Bring out the primal. But so I would chat up with the guys on the forums, but I was not giving any delusions. Like, I was always honest. I'm not an arm wrestler, right? And guys started asking questions like, "Who's this opinionated twat?" And but it was all jokes. I was just tease everyone.
Yeah.
And I remember back they banned me on the North. I don't know if you remember the Northeast arm wrestling message boards. That was the big arm wrestling forums in the in North America, and they banned me because. Wow. But I posted. They say you have to have your own photo, and they said, "No, this guy's a troll," so they banned me. And then Devin the Rat send me a PM, and he was like, buddy, just send me a photo.
All right.
Give me your number, I'll call you and I'll get you unbanned. And I gave him my number, and he called me like 2 minutes later.
Wow.
And he had a chat with me for like 10 minutes. Very nice guy.
Stop trolling everybody.
No, he was like, just keep doing what you're doing. I love it when Tim Bresnan gets angry. But no, it wasn't like that really. But what happened is Todd Hutchings literally called Terence Opperman, and he was like, apparently there's a guy called Botha in Johannesburg. He says he's an armist. I never said I was an armist.
Right.
And Terence was like, all right, I'll talk to him.
I'll smash it.
And then Terence called me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he called me, and he was like, but we were speaking Afrikaans, obviously. He was like, buddy, I think you need to stop your nonsense. I was like, cool. Can you go and read my comments and tell me which one of my comments I should? And then he actually went and read my comments, and he called me back. He was like, nah, it's all good.
Oh, really?
This is a storm in a teacup. He's like, okay, I agree with you. And that's how we met, but they still didn't like me. And Engen Terzi banned me twice on the John. It was like the arm wrestling, the big one. It was like 5,000. I think you couldn't get more than 5,000 members.
Yeah.
It was John and Engen.
Okay.
And they had a split in 2013. I think it was PAL.
Oh, okay.
PAL made Cobra Rhodes their spokesperson from the United States or something.
Okay.
And John was like, yeah, but in the contract it was me, and this is a political move, and blah blah blah. So they split because Engen didn't supposedly defend John enough. I don't know. But in that forum, I got banned twice. And the first time I got banned is when I defended the King's move. I was in the thread where Derek Smith actually named the King's move.
Oh.
And he was like, I think this should be the King's move because only the King can do this. And
Really?
And everyone was like, cool. And then Engen Terzi was like, that's a bullshit move. It's a desperation move. And then I told Engen something like, because Engen injured his elbow, which kind of tapered off his career in 2001 against another Turkish arm wrestler that pulled the King's move on him.
Oh, right.
And Engen couldn't finish him. So Engen tried to press and go outside and press, and he ended up hurting his maybe common flexor tendon or something. And I said something to the likes of Engen. I think it's time to let it go. It's been 10 years now. Just forgive the guy who injured you with his King's move. Boom, banned.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he just banned me immediately. And then and then it was back and forth like that. But then Devin got me. Actually, John Brzenk added me again.
Right.
Oh, you've been added by admin John Brzenk. Because right at that point, John Brzenk was doing everything he could to annoy Engen. And so let's get this twat back. And then yeah, it was just but I was young and enthusiastic and going places in my career, and I was, strong on the table. So Engen came the year after that. He came to South Africa for a seminar series. So the South African Arm Wrestling Federation got him in, paid for his everything, and took him on a safari tour, showed him the sights, and I wasn't invited, obviously, but I just showed up anyway.
Oh.
And I still remember I got Terence's address from friends of a friend of a friend.
Yeah.
And I literally drove out 2 hours to his farm because he has a big farm. His dad has a house there, and and they live next to a dam. And I knew when the time was, and I just showed up. And all these guys wanted to kill me. There was a guy called Botha who already served jail time, and he's a piece of work, that guy. And he was literally like, just better watch your back, buddy. If there's, check the corners. You know what I'm saying? He was like that.
Wow.
I was like, okay, cool. It's arm wrestling. Relax.
Yeah.
And I walked in, and all the guys were sitting along the wall, and then the Engen was, I remember Engen was sitting there and he was rubbing his forearm, and I was like, oh, who is this? And I was like, hey, Engen, it's Lasni. The last Botha that I banned? I was like, yeah. And then he jumped up. He said, all right, come to the table. He just like that.
Oh, really?
And then he smashed me to the pad, and he just kept me there. But he's like, that's kind of like how he is on the table always. He gets you to the pad, and then he doesn't let up, just to show you who's boss,
Okay.
And I was like, I know I'm weak. I'm just starting. I've only been like a year in arm wrestling, a year on table time, and then I'd just try to fight back. And by the end of that session, we were buddies.
Oh, really?
By the end of that session, he was cool, And it was just a fun time, and all the guys, got to. My endurance was mega because I had good CrossFit fitness, like full body fitness. So, which I recommend to any budding arm wrestler to train like a CrossFitter, Anyway, and. Then Terence made friends with me, and then from there I started training with Terence, and I trained for 2 years with Terence, and it was an amazing because he can control you everywhere. Obviously, a guy with that dimensions, that's such a big hand and so much strength. Perfect training partner. Yeah. So that's it. What was the question again?
Yeah, I don't remember what the question, but that was a good round. It was, I think it was how did you get started in the world of arm wrestling?
That was it. Just thrown into the deep end, and everyone tried to kill me.
Right. Yeah.
I think if you can survive getting your arm broken for the first 2.5 years, then you'll be fine.
Right.
So the only arm breaks that I've seen personally is one in a competition from a guy actually that was actually 3.5 years in it, or almost I think 4 years. His name is Christo Nel, but he was like hitting sideways, like his whole body, like his hand stays behind, and he's like hitting in a hook, bam, bam, and the referee saw it, and he was like, maybe I should stop this. And then on like the 5th surge, the guy just went clock, and the guy who he fought was a guy who everybody thought would become like a world champion or something, but he just wasn't very motivated, but massive natural talent. He was like 1 year in arm wrestling, and he was holding a guy the same size as him that has been doing it for 4 years, and it's just everyone was like, yeah, this is the next Zoloev, because he was a teenager then. But he just fizzled out. He wasn't very motivated. And then the other arm break that I saw is I was on the table and I was giving back pressure to a rugby player. There's a coloured rugby player. In South Africa, we call colours like half white, half black. Awesome guy called Clyde Uren. And his surname is Uren, U-R-E-N. I always used to call him the urinator. He was 5 months in arm wrestling, and I was just giving him back pressure, and I saw that he wanted to press from the middle of the table. I said, dude, wait until your shoulder is behind, and I'll concede some table position for you to do that. And literally 2 minutes later, he tried it again, and his arm snapped. But it was such a gentle snap that the guy standing next to us didn't even think he broke his arm. Yeah, they were like, no, it's just some gas popping out of the elbow joint. Yeah, just
some gas.
And he was like, I think I broke my arm.
It's full of gas.
But I knew he broke his arm because I felt the wobble. Yeah, and I saw his arm wobble. Yeah. But he just never came back to arm wrestling. But he got screws in. Apparently, if you break your arm, it's better to try and have that thing. Zoloev broke. I think we spoke about it last time. Zoloev broke both his arms when he was a teenager.
Wow.
His left never came back so well, but his right is mega. So.
Yeah, well, John Brazine broke his teenager.
Well, that was like a green, what they call a green stick break. It just like splayed in half a little bit. Ugh. So it wasn't so bad. I think his epicondyle process just like separated at the bottom and just like split up, which is not ideal.
Not as bad.
Not ideal, but I mean, it probably just made him stronger.
Right.
John is a curious one, though. People are always like, oh, this is arm wrestling genetics at its finest. And John, for the majority of his career, until he met his current wife, Renee, he just lived on pizza and cookies, he said. Oh. Well, maybe you would have been like a Levon status if you actually had a couple of vegetables thrown in there. I don't know.
Yeah. But, he is interesting, isn't he? I mean, he's always sort of sat around that 95, 100 kilo weight and just dominated the world for 40 years or something, which is insane. I mean, the guys he's going up against, super heavyweights, sitting 130, 140 kilos, maybe bigger in some cases, and still beating them.
Well, Russian arm wrestling just got going in like the mid-90s, and we started getting a batch of monsters in like the early 2000s, I think, and onwards. So it's not really, if we could clone a John Brzezinski and he had to compete today, he would still obviously be very high, but he would probably not have had that dominance. And this was one of the discussions we brought up on the England Thursday page, and John was fine. He didn't even say anything. England was like, that's bullshit, and you guys weren't there, I was there, and then a lot of guys were like, it's probably not, it's a different kettle of fish now. I spoke to Hamza that one time, and I was like, like New Zealand has got a population of like, let's say back South Africa had a positive test record of every competing nation in the world from 1903 all the way until 1996. In 1994, they gave over, so-called democracy, and then there was a lot of political, meddling in the sport. But my point is, every white guy plays rugby. Every Afrikaans guy, I played rugby. Everyone played, so they've got a big pool to select from. So it's easier to find the gems coming through. You understand what I'm saying? So New Zealand is like that. Everybody in New Zealand plays rugby, right? So population of 4 million, around about that time, and the people are fanatical about it, and then you are likely to get quality coming through. It's like the Shadara arm wrestling club in Kazakhstan. Those few handful of Kazakhs, well, not a few handful, but I mean, Igor Mazurenko says 60% of the national team is made up of the Shadara guys, you know, coming through, and it's because they make it a lifestyle.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying. So if you just need to foster that kind of thing and see what kind of talent can come through, and that was not established yet in John's day, is what I'm trying to say. And people have a lot to say about training methodologies, and you see, the Americans have a lot of longevity, and a couple of legends like Bresnan and Michael Todd and Hutchings and all these of Jerry Caderet and Devin Larratt. But where's the other guys coming up? Okay, we have half Filipino fat boy Chance Shaw coming up, but he just beat a guy who's like 30 kilograms lighter than him, and it's maybe one of his. He is coming up, definitely. But I mean, there's this very few and far between. But I don't know. Hopefully, we can get something going, and in Australia, if Ryan Bowen has marketed himself as the second best arm wrestler, in Australia. So to have the Delusional Bowen series and Gabby Vasconcelos beating him, what's that Italian guy? Gasparini.
Hermes.
Hermes Gasparini, who beat Mad Mask on a side table, after pulling. It's just gives people reason to ridicule. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I think
I don't know why I said Barboza. He's obviously he's an American and he's like Spanish, but yeah, keep going.
So it's good. I mean, it's like our club is growing. There's a bunch of new faces in there. Hopefully, some guys will stick around. And sometimes you find guys after a year, if they don't hack it or they didn't achieve the results that they think they would achieve, then they just drop it. You know what I mean? I mean, this is a long game.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah, so that's right. Well, yeah, like you said, I mean, in Australia, obviously, our big sports have been the AFL and rugby and cricket have always been the dominant sports that people would gravitate towards. So the good thing is that we have got these smaller sports that are starting to get some notoriety, that people are like, oh, arm wrestling, is that a thing? Yes, it's a thing. We have a club. Here's like, have a look at, here's the YouTube videos of all different matches and training, and so wow, people, it becomes to the forefront of people's knowledge. They suddenly go, oh, this is a real thing. Maybe I'll give it a go. And some people have a go at it, and they don't like it, or they whatever. But as long as they have a good time and they have a go at it, and then they're more than likely tell other people about it and go, no, it was fun or whatever, even if it's not a sport for them. But yeah, it's definitely on that fringe. You can feel of explosive growth. Like it just feels like right at the moment, everything's sort of at this launching point of really taking off. It definitely feels that way for me anyway.
Well, I like Mario's and whose idea was Garage Wars? Mario and
Andy.
Yeah. Andy Lee.
Yeah, Andy Boskowski.
But he used to call himself Lee on Facebook, Lee.
He did, yeah.
What was that about?
I don't know. I know he changed it for some reason, but I can't remember what it is.
Okay, whatever. But it's a good idea because it reminds me of, there's this guy on YouTube, YouTube algorithm throws these random things at you. It's called Moist Critical or something. Penguin Zero or something is his YouTube channel, and he broadcasts a lot of these slap fights. It's not just American. It's like mostly Polish and American, where these guys just take turns slapping each other. And it's a ridiculous sport.
It is ridiculous, yeah.
Probably, but he's getting it out there and popularizing it. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I think word of mouth is very powerful because some people are just not aware it is a sport. If I knew it was a sport, I would have been doing it straight out of high school,
Yeah.
Because I always loved it. And ever since I've been arm wrestling my sister and my mom, I was like, yeah, I can beat someone all the time.
Yeah, that's it. You always come across the people that, I've never been beaten.
Yeah.
I used to beat everyone at high school, and it's like, okay, well, let's have a go. They learn very, very quickly that the high school strength is not going to win them the match.
Or gym strength. I mean, it does have some translation, but
it does. But yeah.
And then there's like monsters out there too that just walk around on the farm, carry some farm equipment and
tractors, and
they just strong. Maybe the fresh farm and fresh food, but who knows?
Yeah. Well, they're the ones that maybe they would be involved in the sport if they knew it was a thing. And
yeah, well, how are you going to get that out to them?
No, exactly. Well, yeah, you've got these monsters that had never that could potentially dominate, and until somebody actually sees them and then says, "Hey, you've ever given it a go," and then gets them on a table and then goes, "Oh my crap, this guy's amazing." It's almost a great Khali from WWE wrestling. He was working as a labourer, like just on the side of the road.
Really?
Yeah, and they drove past and went, "Who's that enormous dude?" And he couldn't wrestle or anything, didn't know anything about it. And it's like, hang on, we got to get this guy in the ring. We got to teach him.
Like a sort of a gigantism issue. Like his legs are maybe not that well developed.
Yeah.
But anyway,
because
he always wears long tracksuit pants or whatever. But not that I watch WWE.
No, but you know who he is. But
exactly.
But this thing is, he never was like gravitating towards, I'm going to be a wrestling superstar one day. I don't think he even knew what it was or spoke English or anything. It was just that they happened to, on one of their tours through, I think it was from India or something, and they've just gone, that guy is absolutely not. The guy working on the side of the road is, 7 foot something. Let's get him and, put him in front of the camera, get him on the table, or not on the table, in the ring, and and let's teach him because he's got something. And you might find that with certain people with arm wrestling world, it's like, this guy's enormous. He has a massive hand. He's been.
That's how Sasha Andreev was scouted, by the way.
Yeah.
Krasimir Kostadinov, the Bulgarian champion back then, he was literally sitting in a park, and then Sasha came past and he had like his big forearm, and he was like, "Hey dude, have you ever arm wrestled?"
Yeah.
And then he just became his coach, and Sasha became like multiple. I think Sasha was 15 at the time or something, 14 or something.
Yeah, his forearm was 30.
Yeah, his forearm was like a calf. What has happened to Sasha anyway?
I haven't heard from him for a little while.
Whatever. But
Get off on that pretty quick.
My point is,
whatever. He's dead to me instantly because you don't know what he's doing.
I mean, his poor coach Krasimir has been suffering a lot of defeats recently as well.
Yeah. That's the game, though, isn't it?
You're
either going to win or lose. And you're going against, like you said, the sport is evolving. You're getting people that are doing this as a living, and people are going to start overtaking the legends of the sport.
That's what they said on that arm wrestling page, where people are like, you Europeans, it's just because your government sponsors you. If we actually had guys in America that were also sponsored, we'd kick your ass. We'd dominate every sport. We'd dominate every fringe sport if it wasn't the NBA and the NFL the whole time. They say things like that.
Uh-huh.
But then the other group are saying, but the Americans don't adhere to any program. They're always doing their own thing, and I don't know how much merit is in it, but some discussions have come up about the different schools of training, like the Georgian or the Kazakh or the American or the Russian, or the Bulgarian, which is the most prolific, in producing arm wrestling talent. I don't know what your thoughts on that, but
yeah, well, it's interesting because it's probably there's no right answer yet in terms of it's all experimental to see. Well, this is what we're doing, and this seems to be working, and then what other people are doing seems to work well for them, and it's probably going to be several decades worth of trying different things to find the perfect method of training, and it's going to be tailored to the individual, because it's the same as working out in the gym. What works for me might not work for you, and what works for you might not work for me, and then that translates against everyone. But the basic fundamentals of go in and lift against resistance is going to be the same for everybody. So finding those fundamentals and then finding the specifics as to, well, what do we do? Do we work on pronation more? Do we work on supination? Do we work on defense? Do we work on speed? Do we explosiveness? You've got to take somebody's genetic abilities, and somebody like yourself who does have very explosive power and hits. Well, to me, it seems that way. Your training would be different to the way that I would be training. And it's sort of, you've got to take the person's strengths, build a game around what they naturally gravitate towards. This is what I always find fun when you get somebody on the table, and once they've sort of learnt the fundamentals of the three basic movements, your top roll, your hook, and your press, that's where you can find, well, which one do you feel dominant in, which one do you feel strong in, and they'll always naturally gravitate towards one or the other, whether it's the top roll or the hook. And some people just can't sort of get the idea of a top roll. It's like, I just can't feel it, but they feel like they want to turn in. They just want to turn in, And it's like, well, if you feel like you're strong there, then we'll build a game around it so that you know how to get to that position where you feel strong. And it's like, to me, it might not feel like they're actually that strong in that position, but to them, it just feels really natural. And it's like, we'll go with what feels natural because you're going to advance and grow so much faster doing the things that you feel more coordinated in.
Yeah, well, arm wrestling not a very natural movement. That's what John Beserker always used to say, very unnatural movement. And John himself, do you see John as more as a top roller, or do you see him more as an inside arm wrestler?
I think he picks his opponents and decides what, because I think he top rolls majority, and if he wants to go to war with somebody, and he'll go inside.
Yeah, look, I mean, if you're in a tournament, it makes sense in the run up to your difficult opponents, just if you can, top roll, to spare your arm and to spare yourself from positional long fought trench wars. But Brzenk himself, I think he kind of approached the world level or started doing world level events when he was 18 and became world champion before his 22nd birthday. But he said it took him more than 3 years to develop a hook, to develop the confidence for a hook.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's not to say if you feel natural going in a certain position, that's going to be your move. It's so funny. Like so like a Bajan, do you think that guy ever trained a hook? Well, obviously he trained a hook. He just knows he will never have a world class hook.
Right.
That guy is so bad versus how excellent he is. In a top roll.
Yeah.
And I've experienced, like, I have the same problem with with my right. With my left, I can go everywhere, but with my right, and it's all about the biomechanics of the arm and the tendon attachment points and the relative lengths of the bones, and all that. But what I have felt when I have developed a hook, it takes me like 3 years consistent training and then all of a sudden the key blocks start filling in, and you don't understand how you're able to get a stop on a guy, but you already have an over reliance on in a hooking position on the muscles that you would normally rely on when you do a top roll. So very pronator heavy hook. Maybe less, reliance on the bicep. So I would like to set a hook by, relaxing my pronator to be supinated, not so much supinate, but to be supinated. And that's a very limiting hook. Like when I began arm wrestling, I thought, top roll is so technical. This is all this because it's the big moves. But now I know better. Hook is way, way more technical. There's so many more angles you can attack from and so many more variables at play. So in that sense, it almost makes sense that 80% of arm wrestlers would be hookers. But the other problem is at high levels, we have a wave of top rollers coming through the top ranks now. But this has been discussed for a long time now. At a higher level, most people cannot avoid a hook. Like it's not like a world-class top roller versus Todd Hutchings, where he says he doesn't know how these boys do it. He has not solved this problem of his wrist going. Sometimes he'll just give it up a little bit to secure some pronation. But my point is, most people have the tools to fight and hook, and even if you don't, you should probably gear yourself towards that. Even though the philosophy is obviously work on your bread and butter first. When you come in, don't try and show up your weaknesses. Try and sharpen your swords. You know what I'm saying? Don't polish your shield, sharpen your sword. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, what were we saying?
Yeah. Well, yeah. No, that's right. So. Yeah, it's what areas people naturally gravitate towards. Yeah. And of the three, it is interesting to see where somebody will head, because you think, okay, this guy would be a natural top roller. Maybe he's got a long forearm, he's quite tall, and it's like he can get over the top of people very easily.
Difficult to say that.
Well, yeah. But, in terms of maybe this is where you would likely categorize them before they've actually even got on the table, where maybe that guy would be quite good in top rolling. And they just can't get the feel of it. And it's like, but then they might really feel good in pressing movements. And it's like, you never sort of know which area they're going to move towards, which I find really interesting, because it's like people can structure a game around where they feel strong, where they feel comfortable, and then they can sort of, how do I get to that position? And then, eventually when you start getting to those elite levels, like, maybe that side of where you're strong isn't what's working for you at that level, and it's like, well, I need to develop something else. But at least you've created the fundamentals of movement throughout the time to build up to that point.
Yes.
Yes,
indeed.
Yeah. How did you start? Did you start top rolling?
Just top roll. Yeah, my hooks has always sucked, but I actually took the opposite route. I decided for 2 years I'll just hook. and it did get strong, but not as it wasn't a smooth ride. But what I did realize, I had a match against the guy who was, I think he was ranked number 6 in South Africa, big boy, Konrad Gil, and he was a left-hand smasher. But he's got a shoulder roll like a flop press, press, but he just whacks his shoulder in there, a little bit like Jerry Carteret. And on the right, he's more hook. And I had a left and a right-hand super match against him, and everybody thought I would beat him right and lose, see my ass left, and it was the complete opposite because I had been training hook for the greater part of 2 years. And what I realized that there was like a mind-muscle connection where you have to see a picture. And if I'm not consciously thinking about engaging my lat, keeping my pronator locked over, and it's like an L-shaped movement, that I was adhering to, but it's a sort of a mid-range hook that transitions to a top roll if you can gain a little bit of hand control with the lat drag. And obviously guys with longer arms, your lat drag is a little bit less effective anyway. But I just smashed them, and I was even giving Terrence a little bit of a rough go, on the left. And I would not have discovered that if I just didn't do that movement thousands and thousands and thousands of times, but I could never, ever, ever get it on the right hand.
Right.
So I just dug my own grave there. I wasn't able to top roll him properly on the right, but I was able to hook him properly on the left.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's worth it. In retrospect, I think I could have just trained my strengths and smashed them on the right and still give him a good go on the left. So. But that happened again at the Arnold Classic, the inaugural Arnold Classic in 2016. This is what I want to say for arm wrestlers: when you start training, you don't know where your limit is, you don't know what your potential is. You actually have a lack of confidence, just like John Brezeng said. He lacked confidence going into a hook. And there was a guy called Donnie Furi, and he got gold and I got silver. I think the weight classes were 100 and under 100 and over 100, and I was too scared to hook this guy, because he's a fitness model. Like he's got that beach muscles everywhere. And anybody from South Africa knows who Donnie Furi is. And I tried to top roll him, and he could just get a hold of me in a strap on his fingertips and just curl me in. And I was like, this is shit. And then we went to the after pulling, but we didn't. Basically, it was just him and him and I, giving each other a tough time. He got gold, I got silver. Went to the table, and then I pulled him. And I realized I could have just hooked this guy. I realized he couldn't put me in a hook, and I was like, "I'm such a retard." If you're struggling there, just give it up, And it's you underestimating yourself and not willing to step outside of your comfort zone is really one of your biggest enemies in life, maybe as well. But like on the table, it really manifests in weird ways. Especially since you're at the club and you think, no, but I can top roll this guy and that guy loses to that guy. And then you construct this narrative because everything is a very relative way of measuring, our strengths. And you see that in the rankings all the time. Like, that guy can beat that guy and that guy can beat that guy. And then it's because your strengths are fluctuating, constantly. I don't know how we got off on this, but... Yeah.
Well, I was asking how you started, which technique you were gravitated towards when you started, and you said that you're mainly towards top roll. And I
tell you, they asked this to Devin. I remember it was one of those old 2012 interviews, and Devin was like, they asked him what his favorite move is. I think it was one of the high hooker videos or something, and he was like, top rolling a guy definitely feels good on the hand, and I kind of felt that, but after a while, I think there's nothing that's more satisfying in arm wrestling. If you can actually hook someone, you can commit a little bit of shoulder, involve a little bit of bone integrity, and you actually come through with your hand rolling. That rolling motion, what you call the corkscrew. I think there's nothing more satisfying than that actually, because you've just pulled through every available weapon that guy had. So that's definitely the holy grail. But it's difficult to get there,
absolutely.
A special kind of guy that can actually hang out there. And the Kazakhs have that in spades, maybe, because they probably grew up that way. I don't know. I don't know if you have actually seen like really elite arm wrestlers and you see them up close, their elbow joint is like super thick. And I'm not talking about like Michael Todd who's broken himself in 10,000 places. I'm talking like just your average guy. It's like that guy, the vet, Botha in South Africa. He only arm wrestles, right? Because he's like Taran. He doesn't like losing. And his right elbow is like this thick, and his left elbow is like human. but his right elbow is like super chunky, and
Oh.
he doesn't look big on camera. And then you see him in real life, it's like this is unnatural proportions. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So Hamza has it nice because he started when he was 16, but
He's doing big things. Yeah, Hamza.
he's going to dust it. I think probably by next year, beginning of next year, end of this year, he'll probably stuff up Jules.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If he has good anticipation on the go, I think he'll be able to close Jules out. Because I want to work with him like Travis Bajent says, work in a range where you in the pinning plane and you get pulled open from a top roll position. I think we need to do that with Hamza. If Hamza can just get a guy there, he can finish him. Anyway, long story.
Just with the way you're constantly smacking the table, it does create an echo through the mics, which will be picked up. So
Sorry, buddy, that's
you're getting excited. I can see it. Every couple of seconds, you're like bang, and it goes.
Sorry.
So yeah, that's all right.
Sorry, boys and girls.
But Hamza, he's pulling on the Garage Wars event coming up against Jordan Browning, who is another up and coming young man. So there will be an interesting match. Hamza obviously most recent super match destroyed me on the table 5-0.
Yeah, I was there. I was the ref.
Yeah.
A couple of rounds in, I was like, should I square their shoulders? Or what's going on
It's
here?
not going to make a difference. He was just too good. It was, I think there was only one round where I sort of got something, and it was only because I think he was just trying to beat me in every possible position. I think he'd beaten me to top roll twice and then hook, and he's like, I'll get him with a press. And that was the only one where I actually caught it.
Yeah, his press is not that great. But, there's some people, their elbow joints can't collapse. Like, obviously, I can just touch my shoulder. Some people, they just block like this, their anatomy is all.
Yeah, guys with big biceps, is that what you think?
Not necessarily, This is a guy who was a very skinny guy called Martin van Wyk in South Africa. He also broke his arm, but he just came back and was super duper strong. And his arm doesn't close. And then he just lies on top of you, and apparently it doesn't hurt him. And he's like rock solid,
Yeah.
You just pack a hell of a lot of weight on that. Anyway. But Jordan Browning, I don't know who Jordan Browning is, but he better be strong. Sorry. How long has Jordan Browning been training?
I think he's been in for a while. But he's an up and comer as well. So we'll be
big, tall, or is he just 17?
He's not as tall as Hamza. I think he's quite young as well. But it should be a very interesting match. So
is there a promo video?
Well, we can have a look and see if we can find some matches or some.
I just want to get an idea of how far this Jordan Browning is going to lose.
Well, Hamza has been doing big things, and it's exciting.
Hamza's strong.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think the fun thing is YouTube. I've spelled it incorrectly because I didn't spell it incorrectly. The fact that the keyboard is too far away from the receiver is the problem here. All right, let's have a look. Jordan Browning. Again, the keyboard has let me down here. Browning. Arm wrestling. And it should be a very good match. There is a whole bunch of really interesting matches that will be on this card. Okay, I'm just going to look through these videos here and see if we can find anything on Jordan. But while I'm doing that, I need to give us a bit of a background on the difference with the training in South Africa versus when you first got here to Australia or to Adelaide. Like, what was the mentality like? Because I know
everyone just wraps you in cotton here, and everyone likes talking about their gains here.
The gains.
The gains.
Oh, the gains.
The shirt's getting really tight. In South Africa, they just want to kill you. You know what I mean? There's a lot more aggression in South Africa, but it's probably a little bit more unhealthy. Like, if you get injured, that's, tough. Here we only have Jules that wants to kill you. So,
yeah, but so when you first turned up and were with Terrence and he was not happy with you, or
Terrence is an outlier. Actually, he's actually super gentle, and because he knows he's going to just crush everyone. There's like 3 guys on Terrence's level, and or close to Terrence's level in South Africa, but he's very patient. He's actually like a super human. Everywhere. He's got a great personality, and so he knows. So Terrence actually, when he started, the established arm wrestling. I think that was back in 2004. He started in 2004 when the World Arm Wrestling Federation World Championships was held in South Africa in Durban. So he went there and got a little bit inspired, and so on, started training him. But there was already like a group of the top arm wrestlers, and they sort of kept their rankings to themselves. You know what I mean? So there's a little bit of an exclusive group. And Terence had to drive hundreds of kilometers to every event. He had to drive hundreds of kilometers to every training session. Like, he would set things in motion. So a lot of respect for Terence. I should actually call him and find out if he can come down and take on Lachlan, because Lachlan's not going to go over there, and they've dropped the restrictions and the COVID nonsense.
That would be amazing.
So,
that would be an incredible match. Lachlan Adair doing big things in the sport, at the international level. So that would be a very amazing match for sure.
Yeah. Terence lost a couple of weeks ago for the first time in like a long time to a guy called Ruan Nel. I don't really know who Ruan Nel is, but his younger brother, I think, is Juan Nel. He won the WAF junior championships when he was 18. So, there's a couple of strong guys, but they rarely get out, But in terms of the difference in training methodology and whatever, is if you... You're going to very quickly become aware who's the best if you go to a South African club or something. Like, the guys destroy each other, it's very, very aggressive. Is that Dave?
It is. I can hear the Dave voice. It sounds like he's on the phone. He might be joining us in a minute or two, which is awesome. We'll get his thoughts on the upcoming Garage Wars event, which he is actually sponsoring, Real Estate Agents Group. He's one of the main sponsors. Him and the Aussie arm wrestler Jake Ward have sponsored the event that Andy and Mario have put on 27th of August, and you can find information on that through the Facebook page. If you look up either Garage Wars 2.0 or the Andy and Mario show page on Facebook, they have all the information how you can watch it, and I do believe that it will be streamed, so it should be a good event. I believe that the Aussie arm wrestler will be commentating during the event. But yeah, we've got a whole bunch of amazing matches coming up. So I'm looking out for Dave. I did hear him, but he's probably going to join us in a minute. But so we've got a whole bunch of some of the familiar names in the Australian arm wrestling scene that will be on this card. So as you said, Hamza and Jordan. We've got Tim the Viking Graham. He's going to be taking on one of the veterans of the sport that runs the House of Pain, Andrew Lee. So that should be an exciting match. I believe that they've faced a couple of times in the past, but
what's the result been?
I think it's been pretty even from what I gather. So it should be a big match. It should be really exciting. I know Tim's been training very hard. He's dieted down and sort of got himself into lean condition, and he's working very hard to be in top form for this match. So, yeah, be interested to see how that goes. And we do have this 4-way showdown happening here, which I believe is still taking place. Hopefully this will still be going ahead, but we've got a bit of a round robin thing happening, or I think it might be like I'm not sure how they've structured it exactly in terms of if everyone will be facing everybody, or if they've got like a match and then another match, and the winner goes forwards and the losers face each other and that sort of thing. But a 4-way showdown with Josh Barker, Taryn Broad, Jules, Renton Cock, and Josh Barnett, who's coming all the way from New Zealand. But
so you don't know if it's single rounds or it's like a series of double elimination, but with super matches like best of 3, best of 3, best of 3.
Yeah, not sure. I don't know whether that's been properly announced as of yet, but either which way, those 4 guys will be facing each other. So it should be very interesting. But
they're gonna have to be very strong to beat Taryn.
Yeah, well, Taryn did face Josh Barker most recently in the New South Wales state titles.
Oh, he's the guy with the curly hair and the glasses.
Yeah, that's the one.
Oh, okay. So I thought that was Josh Barnett.
Josh Barker, that is, yeah. So, that you were talking about just then, with the very fast press on the inside, very, very quick, super fast, explosive power. And he's quite light as well. I think he's between the 70 and 80 kilo mark. So he does compete sometimes in the under 75s, But yeah, he will be an interesting match going up against Taron. Taron would probably be the favourite in that, but obviously having Josh Barnett coming over from New Zealand as well, and Jules I know has been training hard, so he'll be the bit of the wild card in there. So, and all depends on how the matches play out and whether or not they get into some wars, and because that can affect the outcome going into it.
Isn't Fatali Matai or whatever this guy? Isn't he the guy that won the Queensland Championships?
Yeah, that's right.
And he beat
Lachlan Carpenter.
Oh, okay. Yeah, he was pretty impressive.
And Mario as well.
He beat Mario.
Yeah.
He beat
Yeah, so he's
pretty tough.
Absolutely. He's a great guy. Been in the sport for a long time. Coming back from a bicep tear injury from a couple of years ago, he had surgery, and so he's just recently returned to sort of top form. He did very well in the over the top tournament that was in the Gold Coast in Queensland, and obviously has stepped up to another level for the most recent Queensland state titles. Taking out that over Lachlan Carpenter and Mario Tembarkis, who's been on a massive run as of late. So, yeah, that should be interesting to see. We've got Andy Blaskovsky versus Lachlan Carpenter, and we've also got on left, and then Andy again. He's facing another really tough guy, Adam Laura, on right, and Brett Coots, who is a veteran of the sport, very strong, big guy, coming from Victoria. He'll be taking on Mario Tembarkis on the left arm. That'll be very interesting, actually. And Brett Coots again, he's facing Fatali over on the right arm. So that will be another big match to see. These are the main events. So, yeah, there's some big matches on this card to look out for. So we're very excited that will be taking place on the 27th of August. Do you know any of these guys? Or you?
Brett Coots, in 2016, he was, I think, ranked number 2 in Australia. Mm-hmm. And I had some money to spare, and I was in a good shape. And I sent him a message on Facebook. I said, because I wanted to just scope out Australia anyway. I was like, let me just take on an arm wrestler. And I sent him a message on Facebook. Hey, do you want a super match? And I didn't get a response, so I thought, let me add him as a friend. So I just went on his Facebook page and I just see what does he like. He likes dogs and weight training. So I just went and I liked a bunch of dog pages on Facebook, and then I invited him and he added me. And
it was that easy to break the code.
Yeah. He's a simple man. And then he said yes. When he read my message, he was like, oh yeah, sure. He's very casual. He's very, chill. And got retrenched shortly after that. Oh. So I was like, all right, cool. And then I wasted my time doing a master's, and then I came to Australia anyway. So hadn't arm wrestled for 2.5, almost 3 years by then. But I also would like to work my way up the ranks here. But Brett, in the meantime, he's slimmed down a bit.
Yes, he's dropped down. He was actually in the under 95s in the over the top. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he had some health issues because he was sitting in the heavyweight division for a very long time, and then in the over-the-top tournament in the Gold Coast at the start of the year, he actually competed in the under 95 kilos, which I think he weight cut to get down there, and then put the weight back on straight away again afterwards. But he's definitely a lot leaner now than he was. But he did say that he was facing some health issues for a while, which I'm hopefully that have resolved, and he's hopefully back to top form again. But we'll find out when he takes on. He's taking on Mario Tembarkis on left and Fatali.
That's a tall ask, but Brett's left is a strong arm, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he's very good on that. And the funny thing is, when you watch him in a match, you never would see somebody look more casually relaxed.
He's just chill.
He's very relaxed during a match. The other person's giving it everything. Yeah. He looks like he's sort of just waiting on the bus or something.
He's got the John Brzenk demeanor.
He's just casually like, oh yeah. Even though you can tell he's incredibly strong and powerful. But yeah, that should be exciting. There's some very big matches on this. But yeah, what about in terms of your goals of where you're looking for your progress over the next, let's say 12 months? I know you've got a few opponents you've aimed for.
Yeah, I just want to start somewhere in the top 10 and just work my way up to Taron. I don't think I should be asking for matches outside of Southern Australia if I can't beat the guys at home, especially since Taran is a lighter athlete. I mean, sure, he just didn't eat his veggies and he's short, but his arms are like the size of both of mine put together. But I'd like to have another crack. I think I can just, Why is he ranked number 1 left?
I like the fact that you got annoyed about this. Well, because
the only match we've ever had left, I smoked him.
Yeah, but it wasn't a match.
It was a match, and it
was a training.
No.
You thought it was a match.
No. He would like to say it was a train. No.
It wasn't.
Taran. Anyway, but he was magnanimous enough to agree to a left hand match if we do our next right hand match, because I still remember it was after I came back into arm wrestling after a year and a month off, right? when I had the wrist injury, and then they had the whole COVID thing with everyone having their hankies, and I said, give me 6 weeks and I'll have a match against Taran.
Yeah.
And then I got sick for 2 of those weeks, but also this is upgraded Taran. So then Taran beat me 3-1, right? And I said,
on right or on left?
This was just right. Taran doesn't want left because he only wants to stick to his glamour arm. And you flunky. And then it was literally like a month after that. But I had the shitty, wrist injury, so I knew I wasn't going to do anything to him right. But I said, take me left and right, and then all the guys were teasing him, and then he was like, all right, at the first, before training happens, and so we had a left and like I didn't care about right. I mean, I knew I wasn't going to do anything. Wrist hurts. I don't want to make excuses, but it was just to get him to do the left hand match, which I smashed him.
Okay.
All right.
Well. Yeah, well, okay, but he did recently just win the New South Wales state titles on left arm, so
left and right. So he's evolving. Right. He's so coming out of his chrysalis.
And you haven't competed
to a
for quite a while.
Butterfly. I haven't competed. I need to smash his guys at home, and then I'll go look for challenge.
Then if you beat him, then I'll put you up as number 1. But he recently won a state title on his left arm, which is why.
This is like Jerry beating Gennady, and now he's number 1. Now he's number 1 in the United States.
I think that's a bit weird, isn't it? Yeah, I didn't like that match at all. I thought that was the way that both of them had their elbows off the pad by like.
Look,
3 inches.
Engen had a lot to say about that. He said, if you want strict WAF rules, I think running elbow foul solves a lot of what we saw, and they would know if the rules are being called stricter, they need to tighten up, the screws, the screws. Look, Jerry is a very messy arm wrestler. It's always like that because when you're fighting a guy who's coming so far forward, it's easy to fall off the back of the pad if you can't come inside and match him inside.
That's right. Yeah.
It's very easy, and they're going back and forth. They within a centimeter of fouling.
Yeah.
So Engen already told Hristo, and Hristo, in my, I think he's Armenian or something. The
referee?
Where's he from?
I don't know.
Anyway, he's one of the best referees ever, in my opinion. And they're sitting there and they're trying to judge whether this foul is enough of a factor to be called. Now, to me, that's it's very difficult to tell sometimes. And even though these guys,
difficult at all in that match, but yeah, you go.
But I mean. I think they should just give it running up. Like I would like stricter rules, like that match I had with Jules. We had some elbows flying all over the place. Sometimes he started with his elbow off, and when I saw the footage, I was like, let's just do it because we need to get someone who's not Ryan Chameleon as the down ref.
Yeah. And with you screaming and yelling and carrying on. But I'm definitely a favor of not being strict on the elbow fouls, but that in that match, that was like it was a little extreme because I would say that because of the way the other matches throughout the night had played out and the way that I understood that they had set up their rules was that they were ignoring little elbow fouls that were lifts off the pad. If it was a tiny little lift and it didn't really affect anything, don't worry about it, don't call it. Coming off the front or off the back or off the side was to be called as a foul. And there was a few matches where they did call that and a few where they didn't. And it was like there was no consistency. But when they got to Jerry and Gennady, Jerry's elbow was literally about 3 inches off the back. And Jerry's elbow was basically on the middle of the table for several seconds for a long period of time in most of the matches. And it was like they're both going elbow, elbow, elbow. And it was like, well, I get that you want to let this play out, but you're both way off the plan. Like,
the thing that bothers me is that if a guy, if let's say both of them fouls, you know, one of these guys are still getting an advantage out of the position, which lets him run out of gas, a lot less than his opponent. So if you return things back to neutral, that guy is worse off for it, and it's very difficult to tell exactly what happened. Whereas if you tighten the screws and these guys actually stayed on the pad because they knew they were going to be called, it might have been a slightly different result. I don't like when a result is determined by a ref's opinion.
Yeah.
And we say the same thing all the time, and Devin is like, yeah, the ref is the shittiest job ever and whatever. It's the easiest thing ever to call a foul. Calling running elbow fouls helps to let the spectacle unfold. That's already almost as good as it gets, unless we give them those dog shock collars every time, just crank up the voltage.
Let's do that anyway.
Behave yourself.
Even if they keep their overall, that's over. Just random shock.
Just train them. Mazurenko in 2013, he started fiddling around with this idea of having pads with like an elevated.
Hello? The man himself has appeared. He's here. Hello.
I've been standing out there for 20 minutes. I thought, they've got to fucking stop talking at some stage.
And then he chose the point I was making to barge in.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I'll pause this.
No.
And we'll set up the camera for Dave. All right. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Daily Combat Podcast. We have, in fact, been joined by our co-host, co-founder, special guest, winner of the Dave Stockbridge of the Year Award. In fact, it is Dave Stockbridge, and we're going to give you a double biceps just from Hollywood Matt Connolly, because I do have that on my shirt, and I am using that as a frame reference for when I need to cut to. But because you did join us halfway through, and you have to hear this crazy story that I think it's great that you were called by Devin Larratt to get you back onto the forums that you were banned from.
So firstly, how bad do you have to be banned from the forums?
Pretty bad, because they had actual trolls. You know what I'm saying? I wasn't even trying to be a troll.
So how do you get caught up in people believing that you're a troll? Like, what are some of the things, some of the comments?
If you say you're from Africa, people are like, why are you white? You know what I'm saying? Because this was the Northeast message boards. It was before they had the Facebook group. That was the biggest hub for discussing arm wrestling on the internet, I think, in the West at least.
Yep.
And Devin was chatting there, and Michael Todd and all the top guys. Beserker also had an account there.
Yep.
And I just logged on because I was separated from society as a graduate geologist working on the mines in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
So I remember I would sit in the lapa at night, eating my food and just chatting. I had my laptop open in the restaurant where I was working, and I would just like talk shit.
Yep.
And the guy started complaining because I just treat everybody like they're my big chums.
Yep.
And someone started.
So was your problem as a troll being too friendly? Is this what
problem.
you're claiming? You're right. Okay.
I never.
It's too good.
I never even said
too nice to people.
I never even said I was an arm wrestler. I just try to encourage arm wrestling chat, because that's when you're new in the sport, you're very enthusiastic, obviously.
So how old are you at this stage?
I was 26.
Okay. Okay.
I did not know internet etiquette. Right.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So Todd Hutchings contacted one of the moderators, and Sean Latimer. I don't know. It's a big, very strong left-handed. I think he was one of the guys that complained. It's like, who's this South African? Who's this Botha guy? And another thing that happened is Kelly Nelson. I think she's what's that guy? Tom Nelson. The choke him, if you can't beat him, choke him. That guy. His sister,
Half Nelson.
Half Nelson.
Yeah, right. Okay.
His sister,
he's the full Nelson.
Yeah, he is.
Right. Okay.
So two of them together are apparently the full Nelson, because I would talk shit with Tom Nelson, and his sister would lay the smack down on everyone. She was like, the ghetto talk, And I posted it because the guys were like, we don't believe you're a guy from South Africa. Post a photo, because I had already my profile photo.
Yeah.
And then I photoshopped the photo of me in the Batcave, and I had a thing on my wall where Devin Larratt had like a white flag, and he was shouting with like, I just took a clip from the Arm Wars series Sin City that Neil Pickup had on the internet.
Yep.
And I was like in the Batcave with my bat suit in the background, and then I had like this speech bubble. I was like, Kelly Nelson or something like that. But I like cut it halfway to say like, oh, they must never know my identity, because everything is like come on, guys. There was actual guys with fake profiles. Like I was 100% honest.
So no one could believe your name was Lass.
After that photo, they banned me.
That was enough.
But I was okay. This guy.
What led up to that moment? Because I've never been involved in any type of forum.
Tim Bresnan, I think Tim Bresnan always looks like he's like one step away from a stroke anyway. But he used to.
So now I see where the banning came from.
I made a spreadsheet where you could input. Like no, where you input the competitors, and then it like a double elimination formula that gives you the winner. Just something, and then because back then it was the World Arm Wrestling Championship idea started getting passed around by Igor Mazurengo. Say, okay, we'll take the top 10 arm wrestlers in the world and have them. That whole idea for the top 8 was already being discussed back then.
Yeah.
And Tim Bresnan was one of the names in the hat. So I made a hypothetical situation where I had Tim Bresnan. I paired them up, but I had Tim Bresnan fall out in round 1 because I had him up against Denis Saplenkov, which is a great honor, right? I said, this is just random. I just rolled the dice. So Tim Bresnan, he took that personally. He was like, listen, you're a buffer, what makes you think I'd lose against that Russian freak? And then I just kept on teasing him, and I can't remember the things that I said. A lot of things.
Prodding the gorilla.
Yeah, I was like,
he did lose in round 1 in top 8.
It was a premonition.
It's prophetic, but no. But he always used to say like, when you're coming to America, I'm going to break that little chicken wing of yours. He would say things like that, and I was like, just hold tight, old man. I'm working on it. And then they banned me just shortly after that. And then Devin gave me a personal message, but he wrote like a whole page, and it's very friendly and engaging. But I was like, is he in on this or what's going on? And at the bottom, he asked me, what's my number? He's like, yeah, what's your number? He's just call you, give you a chat, and make sure you saw. He's like, I'm like this with the mods, And I'm like, of course. And I posted my number, and literally like 3 minutes later, he just called me, and we had a chat for like 10 minutes about everything. He's like, yeah, so how's it going? Da, 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 da. And I remember it was late at night, and I was just walking around the garden. He was like, yeah, he's looking forward to smashing Denis Saplenkov, and he's got $50,000. I think that was the money he had from Marvin Cohen back then, or it was before that. But he already started challenging Denis that was at the end of 2012 or the beginning of 2013. And so we chatted all about that. And he was like, yeah, cool. So I'll put in a good word for you. And I was like, I don't actually care, but but it was right at that time, and then they got me back on the forums. And Chris Gobby was a real. I don't know if you know Chris Gobby. Yeah. He lost to when I was in my best form. I wanted to come and give him the smackdown, and he was like, "Good luck, my containment is the best," because he knows I'm a top roller. But I did much better against a. Can we say this? Because Ryan Bowen has outed himself anyway. I did much better against a roided Bowen than that was preparing for Chance Shaw, and he smacked Gobby, before that. So it would have been interesting to see how that panned out. I just never got around to it. But Chris Gobby actually sent me a message because they didn't believe like, what is your problem? I've been 100% honest from the beginning. And he was like, this is one of Devin Larratt's burner accounts, isn't it?
Yeah. This false Lasni from South Africa.
So why do you think people are so suspicious of you, though? I mean, this
is
quite
honesty
unusual. The greats of the
shock.
sport, the greats of the sport see your profile pop up and think, oh, fuck it.
Not this twat again. Because the thing is that...
is this John Bresnan just giving a shit?
Tim
Bresnan, sorry.
It's... people comment on this, often, like arm wrestling. It's a very social sport, but it's also you in someone's face, and it's a very rare sport that we get to communicate with the superstars of the sport, right? People have commented, on this a lot, and So I took that one step further, and I was just okay. I'll go in the threads with these guys of putting their heads together under one beanie and having massive, deep discussions. And then I realized within the first year of arm wrestling, it's actually not that complicated. You know what I'm saying? But new guys tend to try and make it more complicated, than it is. And they think, this is a science, this is magical, And so I wanted to encourage conversations like that. And when I realized that you can take the complexity of the whole spectrum of technique and you can marry it with these superstars' ego, then you've got the formula for fireworks, because now they wade into these forums and they just defend their reputations.
Yeah.
And so I started playing them off one another. I was like, well, some say, and then I would. I was like, no, definitely better, and it was, I think that's what got them. And then everybody gets angry at each other and like, who started this bullshit? Everyone looks at me like, I'm
not even an arm wrestler.
I'm just a journalist.
Yeah, that's right.
And I said from the
One
beginning.
of Devin Larratt's burner accounts.
Exactly. They thought I was Devin Larratt because Devin was such a clown back then as well. He was his profile photo was one of those, because people, the tradition was they would post like a profile photo with their forearm, and and Devin like just held up his little skinny forearm, and he had one of those those things that you would see at the ball game.
Oh, the big hand.
Yeah, the big hand. So he was like, they put two and two together. So this is Devin. But after that, it actually became the John and Engen Facebook page, and within like a month, it was already full capacity, 5,000 members. Facebook wouldn't allow you to have more than 5,000 members. But John and Engen had a bit of a falling out, and John would comment frequently. He doesn't really have much to say. He's a very chill guy. But Engen banned me twice because I was in the thread where Derek Smith coined the term King's Move. Because he started a thread and it was like a whole page of him waffling on about, listen, this is a move that is only for the battle hardened. So only the king can pull this move. So he said, I'm going to call it the King's Move, because it started getting a lot of flack, because this was a couple of years after Michael Todd returned from his shoulder surgery, and he was starting to really develop a King's Move and become a problem on the top scene. And you had proponents for and opponents against, and I agreed with him. I said, there's so few people doing it, and I showed when I was new in arm wrestling, and I was like, all my friends need to know about arm wrestling now, and I would show them videos. I would select some of my favorite videos, and I would show them Michael Todd, just to show them, imagine having an open arm like that and holding on to a guy that's so freakish. And they were like, this is amazing. So even an amateur can recognize that there's some serious strength and finesse involved in that. And so I was obviously proponent for, the King's Move. I don't care about sucking up to any of the top arm wrestlers. I also have an opinion. In terms of the aesthetics of the spectacle, some guys just, this is ugly arm wrestling, or, whatever. How many people are doing that? Yeah. But Engen Terzi in 2000, I think it was against a fellow Turkish arm wrestler, he injured his arm, his elbow, trying to finish a guy off that was King's moving, but the bad kind of King's move, the one where they have their shoulder, below the pad, and that was in a stage where they weren't very strict on warning guys. Yep. The WAF rules have always said, a guy gets a warning, but they could do it how many ever times, and so Engen had a vendetta. He had the knives out for this
King's move,
this
and the supporters of the
this heretical King's move, and. I just told Engen, I said, buddy, it's been 10 years. Time to let it go. You got to forgive that guy. And he banned me immediately.
The pain was still there and deep.
No, but Engen, he engages with trolls a lot, but it's like he hates. You can even see it on his YouTube account. Like he often pins a top comment where he's wagging the finger. You know what I'm saying? But okay. Then John Brzenk added me back, because at that point John Brzenk had a bit of a falling out. So he's like, "Who's the biggest arsehole that I can get to piss Engen off again?" And then Engen banned me again. And then Devin spoke to Engen again, and then Engen added me again, but then he 2 months later he banned me for something, and I just moved on because I got very busy with my life.
So you moved on from the greats of the sport and let them continue to talk about this.
But they're best friends now, Engen and Las. So.
Oh, really? So tell us about the makeup. How did that come about?
I just invited myself to a seminar it was a closed seminar, actually. Funny enough, the South African Arm Wrestling Federation paid for, they gave them obviously the accommodation, and they took him on a African safari, as well. But they also paid him a sum to, like a salary, a deal for him to come and deliver a 3-day seminar and train with all the boys.
Wow.
And
Great.
I got wind of this via the Facebook grapevine, and I wasn't invited because I had already received death threats from
Engen?
no. Engen, I don't exist. Like Engen is not fussed. Like he's just okay, troll, delete. But there was a guy like David Botha. He gave me a call and he said, I need to watch the shadows and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so they said that they were gonna just destroy me and break my arm, both my arms, and I won't be able to wipe my ass and stuff like that.
And was that because of trolling again, or what?
No, because
what's the source of this consternation?
What happened was Todd Hutchings called Terrence, because they were all, because Terrence is like an elite, world-class arm wrestler and a very good ambassador for the sport as well, very, very good guy.
Yeah.
And Todd Hutchings called Terrence. He's like, who's this? Because he first sent him a message and Terrence showed me the message. Then Todd Hutchings called him. He's like, this guy says he's an arm wrestler from South Africa and he's so opinionated. And I never once said I was an arm wrestler. Actually, I started the Johannesburg, which is like the economic capital of, economic capital of South Africa. But I mean, we didn't have an arm wrestling club, and I started it. And I actually made all my club members angry at me by saying, because the spirit is very high in the beginning, right? And I get the guys in and I tell them, oh, you've got so much potential. And this is not an overnight sport, so you need to hang on for a couple of years. But you guys are all doing great. And then like after like half a year, I was like, none of you guys are arm wrestlers. But I try to say it in a way to like give them motivation, because it's like, being an arm wrestler is like wearing a badge of honor. You know what I'm saying? It's not like if I go and put out a fire, I'm not a firefighter. You know what I'm saying? If I spend one day, going down the stripper pole, I'm not a firefighter, right?
Yeah.
And so they were very angry at me, and then they said, okay, we need a definition of what an arm wrestler is now. And then they would like start SMSing their friends and like, oh, what is an arm wrestler? Oh, if you've done a table practice and you are committed to the sport, then you're an arm wrestler. I said, bullshit. Being an arm wrestler is
it's a lifestyle, man.
Is undergoing that baptism of fire, is suffering. The radial nerve inflammation and the aches and pains and the. So yeah, I'm trying to make it a degree. You need a degree in arm wrestling. This is a 3-year for the long haul, right?
Yeah.
Were you an arm wrestler at that point?
That makes it even worse. I wasn't. But
handing out black belts.
Make black belt.
But at least I can talk then. I said, none of us are arm wrestlers. I didn't say you guys need to aspire to be where I am. I wasn't like that, I'm just saying we are heading in a direction. Anyway, so that was my style, and people don't like my humor. But so everyone wanted to kill me anyway. And Terrence as well. Terrence actually called me before I even met the guy. And there was another incident as well. Terrence posted, something like a Christian message, and then I said some. I can't remember what.
That something was anti-Christian.
No. I like, because I'm a Christian, but I made it seem like I was playing devil's advocate, and it was like, this guy is so annoying. And then so he called me one day, and he was like, all right, all these guys are complaining about you. You need to.
Who are you?
Yeah.
This is Devin Larratt's burner again.
And then I just and he said, you need to delete your comments or stop commenting. And I said, okay, just which one of my comments do you want me to delete? And he said, no, the ones that are inflammatory. And I said, okay, go read them and tell me.
Yeah.
And then the day later, he called me. I was like, oh, yeah, actually, I agree with you. And he was like, okay. And then we were kind of buddies, but I wasn't invited to anything. End of December 2013, they got Engen Terzian. And
so were there a few arm wrestling clubs in South Africa at the time, or was
it 8 main clubs in every province except Gauteng? Funny enough, so I started the one in Joburg with my ragtag mob, and they're still going strong, luckily. But
are they arm wrestlers yet?
They still hate you, though.
No, I'm still.
They're called the anti-lasses.
We couldn't even decide on a name for the club. I remember I literally named it as I was going out the door in my apartment one day, because everybody had like, oh, we're going to be the killers, or we're going to be the arm destroyers. And I was like, this is so lame. They're like, have some self-awareness, please. And I was like, how about Jaws? you know, like Johannesburg Arm Wrestling Syndicate, you know, Jaws.
Okay.
And they were like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's up, it's a working title, you know, and it's just stuck. And then we started printing out the Jaws shirts, and we had a bunch of characters, you know, and, you know, they all went their ways, and now there's like 3 clubs in Joburg. But back then, they got Terzi in, and I found Terence's address from somewhere. I just like, I've been invited to the seminar. What is Terence's address? And then they gave me his address. So I drove out 200 kilometers. I drove to his house. And it looks like a scene from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, because it's like this grassy field, this dry grass, and then there's like a house, you know,
Off in the distance.
Yeah. I was like, this is how it ends. But I walked in there. He has it's actually a nice it's like 5 houses or 3 houses together, and the house in the middle is like his game house. So he's got like pool tables and the pool outside and the bar, and that's where he has his arm wrestling practices. And I just walked in, and everybody was like sitting along the walls. And I remember Engen Terzi was sitting like rubbing his arm, and there was 2 guys. There was like 4 or 5 tables, and I just walked in. I was like, "Hello, everybody," and they were like, "Who are you?" And I was like, "Las." And Las.
Oh.
Hi.
And then it was like I could, you know, you could hear a pin drop. But
Yeah.
I mean, Engen actually jumped up. It was like, "Oh, so you're Las Botha," and then he said, "Come to the table," and then he just smashed me into the pad, and he just kept me there like 4 minutes. but but I didn't want to be a pussy, you know. I was like, okay, this is my rite of passage.
Your
you know,
baptism
my
of fire.
baptism. So I was just like, you know, I was like, is it lifting off the pad yet? I was like, I don't know if I can feel any distance, but and then after that we were buddies, and then they invited me for dinner too. So it was me and Engen and Terence and his wife and 3 of the top arm wrestlers in South Africa, and we all just had a dinner, and then they were chill.
Yeah.
You know, and then they were like, okay, this Las is not as big an asshole as we thought. And after that, I just sort of every week I would travel 420 kilometers to train with Terence in the week.
Wow.
He was preparing for the 2015 World Championships, and then I trained with him for a year and a half. And after that, I was pretty confident in my abilities. And rest is history. I had to escape Africa eventually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
And we're going to set up a match with Terence and Lachlan.
We need to get it going, because the COVID nonsense threw a spanner in the works. But we can't. Back then we couldn't have gotten Terence in because he's got a business and a family to quarantine for 2 weeks. That's just not going to happen. Yeah. And obviously Lachlan was not going to travel there. Yeah. But now we can do it. Hopefully, I don't know if Terence has been training, because he's a weird guy. He's a genetic freak, but he needs a target. He needs a date and something to hopefully, more or less 6 months heads up. But I don't know how. Maybe I should call him now.
Give him a call. Let him know the Intercontinental title is on the line. It's waiting for him.
Brett
It's
the
here in
Hitman
Adelaide.
Hart has dropped the belt finally.
Next week Tuesday, and
we're ready. Yeah, give him a call. Let's see if we can tee this up.
Are you going to call him now? Wow,
Yeah.
we're going to do this live.
This is live. This is an Daily Combat exclusive.
Wow, this is
but
cool.
you are not going to understand because it's Afrikaans.
That's all right. We'll listen and enjoy. He does speak English though a little bit, doesn't he?
His English is super bad.
Well, you can translate for us afterwards.
All right.
This will be fun. This is crazy.
What are you
I didn't know this was a thing. Lachlan hasn't agreed, by the way.
I'm going to say Lachlan is ready and ready.
Lachlan's ready.
Lachlan said.
Hallo, is dit nou net?
Nee, so van dit.
Goed en self is Lasni. Ek weet nie of jy my nog kan onthou nie.
Ja,
Skus man, ek wou net bel en hoor hoe gaan dit en bietjie gesels met Terence.
ek gaan vir jou 'n ander nommer stuur, hoor.
Okay. Alright.
Ek kry 'n nuwe nommer, so ek stuur hom gou vir jou.
Alright, baie dankie.
Okay, bye.
Okay, goed gaan, bye. He's got a new number.
He's got a new number.
Oh, that's not his number.
That's his wife. She says he has a new number.
I thought she was agreeing to the matchup.
Yeah,
I
she
thought
said
Terence has got a
first
high.
to 6.
Terence has got a high voice, but I'm sure it's more than made up in.
Well, Terence has never been the same after he went off the trend.
It sounds different. It sounds different off cycle.
to what I thought he would sound like.
I thought, geez, he was quick to agree, wasn't he?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's all it took. That's fantastic. She's sending the new number, is she?
Hang on.
This is exciting.
I think I spoke to him on. Yeah, he sent me a message in February actually.
You can go through Facebook
On
or
this
something?
number.
Might ring through Facebook Messenger maybe. If it works, I don't know.
Well, this is good because Matt's got Lachlan's number.
Yeah.
And, no.
That's it. Oh, no, yeah. He'd
Yeah,
be
anyway.
like, what? You've done what? I don't think you, yeah. Is this the guy that keeps getting my weight wrong?
Anyway,
Yeah, by the way, you're competing at 140 kilos.
Yeah, that's 140.
Yeah.
That's probably what Terence weighs.
he weighs probably about 115.
Just walking around.
Yeah.
Just a beast.
He's like a Gunter's, like, just massive.
He's-
He'd be bigger than Gunter's, but yeah.
He's got a bigger back than Gunther, and his hand is broader than Gunther.
Phew.
Gunther feels a little bit more human than Terence.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like it when you see the guys on camera. A lot of these elite armors, you see them in person, they have like these weird proportions. And Terence is like that. He's solid iron. But he doesn't train as hard as he could have. But he's got his own business, billion belt scrapers, and he's a plumber as well.
Yeah.
The plumbing business. So I don't know if.
Just ring the plumbing business.
It's ringing. Hello, I've got some turds you need to take care of.
So how did you discover arm wrestling? Were you sporty as a kid, or
I always liked arm wrestling
Yeah.
on the school tables. I remember arm wrestling my sister when I was 5 years old.
yeah, right.
But my
She's still recovering.
Yeah.
hey, at least I could beat my older sister. Engen Terzi, when he was 16, lost to his sister and his mother. That's what started his obsession.
Yeah,
'Cause
right.
I told the story last time, but there was his mother had a flower shop in Istanbul, and there was a customer, old friend of hers, and he arm wrestled her. And then when he left, Engen Terzi's 16-year-old flower boy, he was like, all right, let me give it. And his mother beat him. He was like, cool, let me try my sister. His sister beat him. So then he went ballistic. And
This will never happen again.
Engen is big on pride. But no, how I discovered that it was actually a regulated professional sport was through YouTube. I was just sitting at home one day and I was like reminiscing on a school table arm wrestling. I was like, world's strongest arm wrestler, because I was expecting to see, okay, well, nowadays it is Levan and Saplenkov. But I was surprised to see that it was John Brzezinski at that time.
Yep.
And I was like, this guy isn't big.
Yeah.
But if you look closer, if you look closer, you can see, okay, something weird going on over here in this general region. But then I immediately started going on the internet, seeing where the clubs are, and there was very few and far between, and everyone hated me very quickly after that. I just arm wrestled with my buddies. I called them over. I was like, why are you so hospitable? I haven't seen you in like this arm wrestle. But the year after that, I went as a graduate geologist. I went to a very far off place, and I did very far out of society. And so all the rock draw operators were big, beefy black boys, and I would literally bribe them with KFC.
Yeah.
And I would
to
be
get
like,
on the table.
No, we had these rails where they would pack the rocks. So they drill core and they pack it into core trays, and then they have these, which is basically old drilling tubes, and they just welded them together so that I have something to log the core with.
Yep.
And then I would tell them, come here, you can use two hands. And
Wow.
no, I wasn't that strong yet. But for the weaker ones, I say use two hands. But there was one guy, he called himself the World Machine. And I always tell them,
Good
buddy,
title. Good title.
yeah, it's
Doesn't make sense. But
For two reasons. You'll remember it, no one else will take it.
yeah, but he would get but he was one of the bigger guys. He was a Zimbabwean guy, and he was like, "Oh, you are now facing the World Machine," and he would like shake like this.
sounds terrifying.
Yeah, it was a little bit terrifying. And but he wasn't actually that bad. There was another guy. It was a fat, jolly guy. He was one of the shop stewards for the unions that used to visit. He was a big, I can't remember what his name was.
Santa, I think.
He was like a Jabba the Hutt. He would just sit there and just like, he was just jolly all the time. And I tried to arm wrestle him, and I actually tore my common flexor tendon, like I extended it, and my whole arm got floppy. And I was like, shit. And that injury stayed with me for like 3 years, hampering me in a hook. But and it's still there, obviously. But yeah, that guy. I can't remember what his name is, but
Was he still laughing as you did it? Or?
no, he was. I can't remember.
Floppy arm.
I don't think he realized he actually tore something because I just played it off. I was like, "Oh, I'm just loosening up, baby." You know.
Just loosening up, your arms completely flop. Yeah, it's all ready to go now.
And there was another guy that made it worse called Kenny Dickinson. He was one of the Boilermakers, but he was just a unit. He was like Taran, but just a bigger Taran, you know?
Yeah, right.
And he also manhandled me, and I was like, just you guys wait. I've been chatting on the forums. How do I beat the Boilermakers?
Engin comes in. I've dealt with this before.
Right.
After my mother and my sister, I moved on to Boilermakers.
They were next. They were on the list.
Yeah, no, she hasn't sent me, but anyway, I'll contact them later. But yeah, that's how it started.
So, how long you been arm wrestling now?
On and off 10 years, which is very sad because
You thought you'd be world champion by now?
yes,
That was the ambition.
yeah.
It's all injuries, isn't
The
it?
thing is that
Saw John Brzezinski. This should be easy.
Yeah.
Yeah. 10 years in.
Back in the days, they used to discuss and they say basically it takes 4 to 5 years to see your actual potential come through.
Yeah.
But they often used to say within about 7 years, you can get all you can possibly get out of an arm wrestler potentially. Now, if you look at a guy like Crazy George, he arm wrestled for 40 years, and then towards the end of his career, with him being a cripple, it turns out he's got a new avenue that he can attack people from, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, Crazy George, awesome. Or a guy like, let's maybe look at Todd Hutchings. He was strong from the beginning, but he only started when he was 36. But he got on he was narrow. If you look at him in the beginning, he had this narrow face, and he got on the growth hormone, and he just popped out.
Yep.
So if you can move in that direction, you know, he's better looking now than he was back then. I'm just saying, arm wrestling, he's a good advert.
He's now got a square jaw.
He's squared away now.
Chiseled good looks.
He's chiseled.
Great.
But he's 56, and look at him rock, you know.
Yeah.
It's amazing. But look, I mean, everybody has their opinion on PEDs, but
Yeah, that's right. And what's yours in the sport? What's your
What do you
opinion
take?
on
opinion on PEDs.
Yeah, no, what do you want?
What do you take?
Is this Mike's fault? No.
What's your feeling on that? Because
I
the
think-
sport's largely unregulated with respect to performance enhancing drugs, and so it seems to almost be a matter of mutual consent between the athletes at the moment. It seems with some of these big super matches where there's a bit of knowledge behind what both parties are doing, and then they come together and
there's consent at the moment, or like this atmosphere of consent, or whatever, however you want to see it. But
that's a very good
or
question,
understanding.
an
But
atmosphere of consent.
Cloud, a dark cloud.
A
Of
dark
consent.
cloud of consent. Anonymous.
The sharp knife of consent.
A lot of that followed on from WAF going under, right? Because WAF, a lot of the politics with their, president embezzling funds or whatever the hell the problem was, but the way they bossed their, threw their weight around didn't sit well with a lot of arm wrestlers. They came up with the IAF, and that didn't take off very well either. And a lot of the people want to stick to the prestige of having a unifying organization, which would allow them to pat themselves on the back as a world champion, as a competitor. That's obviously the ideal that 99% of the guys are striving for in the first place.
Yeah.
So WAF going out of the picture, a lot of the guys stopped, competing in tested events. And tested events is a problem in and of itself. And every single year they catch 10,000 Russians.
Yeah.
Doping, right? So, and they dope off season and they dope a little bit, but then when they get off it, your Dmitry Trubins, for example, or let's say Prudnik, it's sad to see, in my opinion. I think there are more well-rounded arm wrestlers. Dmitry Trubin would go everywhere. That's because maybe he wasn't as strong, so he needs more tools in his arsenal, and he was a more well-rounded athlete. And I think there's a psychological component here. When you go on the roids and you hone your strongest weapon, you have an over-reliance on that, and you start to lose confidence in the other areas that you would usually go, because now you go through a season where guys that you usually couldn't beat, you can now overpower in your one groove, your one lane.
Yeah.
So that makes them more one-dimensional arm wrestlers. I've seen this time and time and time again. Dmitry Trubin is probably the best example. He was so smooth and well-rounded, and then he became Optimus Prime. And they call him Optimus Prime. And then he starts walking around like a pumpkin farmer, and I think that's all that's going on in their heads, sometimes. But it's like, to me, it's a bit tragic. Prudnik maybe a little bit, but Prudnik is a little bit more a complicated story because he tore his shoulder labrum, I think, in 2015, and then he tried to encourage. That's when I thought he was a natural athlete because it was like he's going on a 10-day water fast to encourage his natural growth hormone production. This was the things he would say in interviews and post and whatever. So I thought, this guy is natural. Otherwise, he would just get it out of a bottle, right? And then the idea of the top 8 started coming along, and then whoop, there's now all of a sudden you have 115 kilogram Prudnik with zits on his back, right? So look, I mean, but he didn't lose too much, technique. As is an intelligent guy, but I thought also he wouldn't want to go on roids because he's a stage actor and opera, or like sort of an opera singer, right? I thought that would affect his voice. Or whatever. It doesn't seem to phase him at all. And he did some Ukrainian television acting as well.
Yeah.
So I don't know. But
did he become president or no?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. There's a lineup.
That's the qualifications that you need, though, if you are going to become Ukrainian president, I believe.
Yes. It's just one of them.
A comedian or an actor, or both.
And an arm wrestler.
Yeah, but I mean, cool. I mean, but if you look at, let's say, how many people think Ongarbayev, Kidagali, how many people think he is on roids? Like, maybe not many. Like, I think that maybe Ivan Matyushenko wasn't on roids. Like, he was elite, but he had his moments, and he always wanted to compete. He was actually outspoken against roids. And it's very rare to find someone that talks out against roids. Usually that means they're kind of not roiding, because if you catch them out, I mean, that would be a double tarnishing of your reputation. I don't know, and I'm not sure. Some people come out and they say, everyone's on roids. I know Terence has competed not on roids, and Terence has trained not on roids. I know this. And I know that there are guys like that. And
they're physical freaks, and they're almost all Afrikaan, but that's...
Look, it would be, look, the thing is, if you have a tested sport, or there's an organization that oversees testing in a sport, and obviously you can't get around to testing everything, the onus and now the burden is now dropped in the lap of the non-PE deer to up his game if other guys are secretly roiding. You understand what I'm saying? It's like, if you go to a restaurant, you can sit in the smoker section or the non-smoking section, but you're bringing that foreign element into the game. You can only sit in the smoker section, but now they have a way where they can sit anywhere, and it's unfair, especially when there's money on the line. And Devon had a fair amount to say about this back in 2013, 2014. I don't know if anything changed for him then, because that was post-surgery, and he had to look at a couple of options. I don't know, but the attitude towards PEDs has changed a little bit. People are more open. Jonathan Hoffman, he had this whole post that he did on the Northeast Arm Wrestling boards as well, or on Facebook or whatever, and he made a fake account, and then he posted my journey in PEDs, and he said no, it didn't make him that strong. Other people, say they couldn't have accomplished what they've accomplished, without it. And you have James Retorides, who wrote the Arm Wrestling Handbook, the Strong Arm Tactics. I think I was the only guy in Africa that bought it, by the way. But then I duplicated it and spread it around. Because I knew no one was going to buy it, right? I was just trying to get the...
You put it as a PDF and put it up everywhere.
It was an electronic book, but sorry.
It was now.
No, but he was very vocal against roids. He came into the arm wrestling forums, and there was one thread that got deleted within 40 minutes by Engen because he shat on John Brzezinski. It was like, people think you're the Father Christmas of arm wrestling, but I know you've taken Sustanon or whatever, and you on this TRT and whatever. And then John's only answer was like, I never claimed to be Sunset Laws, and if there was a poll that came out that made you 30 years younger, would you take it? And then he said, if there was a competition where there was $1 million on the line, would you do anything that you could possibly do to win that money? That was all John Brzezinski said. So John basically, admitting it. But if you watch the Pulling John documentary, it looks like he's coming along fine. And then when he was 34, he decided, maybe I need a little bit of help here. And then after the Pulling John documentary, which they started filming it in 2004, but it was only released in 2009. And the 2009, 2008, 9, 10 version of John just before his surgery was beastly. Obviously the dude's roiding. He was also, well, actually 2006. So sorry, 2006, because he lost to Alexei Vovoda, and then there was a lot of talk of his super match coming up. But John has also, funny enough, been pretty selective of his super matches, and he's almost never taken a rematch on the top level. Like he didn't want to rematch Devon, and he didn't want to rematch Arson, and it's like what's going on there. But so he has also been playing a tactical game regarding his reputation, in my opinion, where people look at him and say, no, he will just arm wrestle anyone, anytime. I don't think so. But it's very clear, 2006 on, or maybe 2005, late 2005 onwards, after he's preparing for Vovoda, it's very clear that he just beefed up. I don't know. But
Do you think something similar happened just recently? Because
with John,
because he didn't he step on stage? I don't think it was East versus West, but it was only a matter of a few months ago, and it was 118 kilos or 115 kilos in the weigh-ins.
Really?
It was 115
Well,
kilos. It was not 95 kilo, John Brzezinski. It was 110
obviously,
plus. I'd like to think 115
he's
kilos.
57 now, I think, and since his return, he's
I
been
think
trying
he's
to.
leaned up since then a little bit. Yeah.
I'm not a. This is more, other guys. You can just try and guess and see, But I mean, if you're going to ask any amateur like me, like, what's your opinion on it? It's like most people are going to say, I wish there was an Olympics for roiders. Like, we want to see the best of the best and take everything in. Absolutely, let's see the freaks. Let's see the freak show.
Yeah.
To me, I don't care about that. Like, the freakier a guy gets, the less I'm interested. I want that Trubin, that 2012 Trubin.
Right.
That is with his back against the wall and he's fighting in every ridiculous angle and ripping his thumb literally to shreds. He almost popped his thumb off. I want the Kitagali Ungarbayev, where he's been training on a table since he was 5 years old, man. And a lot of his countrymen have come out and say he's a traditional ethnic Kazakh that's come from the tribes of Ongar warriors under Genghis Khan, when the Khanates fractured in the early 13th century and moved west. And make up half of the population of Kazakhstan now.
Yeah.
And to him, health is everything. So he's also one of those vocal people that come out against roids. Unfortunately, he had a shoulder operation in 2008 as well. After the top 8 injured his shoulder, but before then he was hooking Silaev and Vitaly Lalatin. And these guys, I mean, Silaev is a hook monster and Vitaly Lalatin is a top roll monster, and he just wiped them off the table. And that was 2018. 2018 Nemerov, I think that was the last one or something. But 2015, Kostadinov, Krasimir, who was always expected to be the champion in the 110 below, category 100 to 110, he actually went to below 100 because he was afraid of Lalatin. He actually avoided Lalatin, so he was like, all right, I'm going to start, dropping myself. But anyway, that's what I want to see. To me, do what you want, and okay, maybe people can say people are giving Brian Bowen a pat on the back for coming out and saying, okay, this is my journey with roids and whatever.
Yeah.
I personally, I think you can roid and do your growth hormone or whatever if you've got an injury, because then you can't even compete. You can't even come to the table.
Yeah.
By all means, like if somebody has a car accident or whatever and they want to heal them up, by all means, like just give this guy the gift of arm wrestling, just get him in. But if there's nothing wrong with you and you want to just roid for competitive advantage, I have a little bit of a problem with that, because if all other things being equal, I have to now go on the source to see who's the real winner. Come on.
Yeah. And then it has to be the same amount, and then it has to be the same stuff, and it takes parity off the table, doesn't it? That's probably the
other
big
problem
dilemma.
is people aren't competing in events and say, yes, I'm a roider and this is what I'm taking. So how do we know?
Yeah.
You see the guy's off-season version and you see the guy's competition day version, and what are you looking at?
Yeah, it is difficult, and it is. This time in the sport, you have got the untested side of things where it just costs too much. It's too hard to implement testing at this stage. The sport's not at a level where it's practical. It depends which way it goes. I'd be surprised to see them start to implement it. In all honesty, I think that it would be a long time before, and really, what the UFC brought it in with their combat sports side of things, mainly because they were looking to sell the product, and they wanted to have, we're a tested league, and they brought in the WADA guys, like the people who are the absolute Olympic best at testing, and they set up that whereabouts testing, and they were testing guys constantly. They still are, and then they put their business up for sale, and it's like, well, that's why they brought that in. But the fights did lose their glamour. The guys were smaller, they weren't as strong, there weren't as many knockouts, it wasn't as spectacular, they didn't look as impressive. Guys that were on top did start dropping down, and the product did suffer because of it.
Well, it comes down to the organising, the associations and the federations, and the Australian Arm Wrestling Federation came out quite strongly about a year ago from memory, and said, look, we're following the ASADA protocols, we're anti-PEDs, and this is what we're going to be doing. And they released a big document, big policy document that looked like essentially the document you might get if you're in an Olympic accredited sport, and what I'd be interested to know, Phil, is whether or not you've done a single test since you released that document.
I would say it's more than likely a similar situation where maybe they were appeasing a sponsor or appeasing somebody to say, look, we are supporting a tested league and we're for athlete safety and all the rest of it, and it's like we're going to put this statement out there and then we're going to hunt for sponsorships, and maybe that's the first thing that they search when they search up their organisation. Oh well, look, they are on board.
Seemed
with that.
very unusual timing because there was no competitions at the time, was there? Like there was no competitions, there was nothing really going on, and but they came out very strongly, but without the testing protocols. So if you're going to come out with quite a strong statement, and since then we've had over the top, we've had state titles in many of the states around Australia, but no testing. No testing's been evident, and in part because it's about $5,000 to test an athlete. But there are requirements if you're so associated, and to continually test your athletes, and so if you're going to release a policy document like that, one would imagine that you'd have to back that up with something.
Yeah, I'd say it was probably in a way not politically motivated, but motivated probably, and I'm just guessing here because I don't know, but
it's completely it'd be speculative.
It would, it would be speculative to say this is the thought process that I would expect they've done it for. I'm going to release this statement that I'm supporting this for the appeasement of a potential sponsor or something like that. So, yeah. But, it is interesting. I think depending on how big the sport grows, whether it will get to a point where they say we want to implement it, because it does harm, unfortunately, it does harm the product.
Well, UFC had a very similar dilemma, many years ago, where a lot of the athletes were competing very, very juicy, and then there was a big difference between Vita Belfort before on and off, and so the UFC had to clean up their act there, and that did mean actually bring in ASADA, and that meant implementing a testing regime, and it, as we saw more recently, that also means rewarding the athletes. When they're able to test consistently negative over a long period of time as well. Yeah, Max Holloway, for instance, was recently given a big pat on the back for, I think it was his 50th test where he's come up. Yeah,
it's funny, isn't it, to be like, oh, well done, you haven't cheated yet. Well done. We haven't caught you yet. Do you know what I mean? I'm not saying that he's using it, but it did, like for me, who's watched it since the beginning, I did see the big drop in terms of spectacular big fights. That was like, it did lose, and the guys who were winning and dominating, they lost a lot of the strength, they lost a lot of the size, it weren't as impressive.
But then a new generation of fighters kind of worked their way through, and that it was really the narrative that sold tickets and got bums on seats and drew attention to the sport.
It does go hand in hand. I think if you had both together, it would have exploded, and I do believe they've sort of hit a point and dropped a little bit in the most recent years. And as we were talking about last week, the oversaturation, so many fights, so many things, and especially
so many personalities you can't keep up with.
That's right. And it's like, if you want to stand out in that world at the moment, my God, you've got to have so many things.
Got to have a gimmick.
That's right.
Got to win.
The gimmick. Yeah, you got to be a winner. You got to win spectacularly. You got to have a personality. You got to be good at on the camera. And have a big following to even get on the card.
And is this the big struggle with arm wrestling, lads? Like, we've got this this whole generation of arm wrestlers who have been at the top of their game for the last 20 or so years that are maybe entering the twilight of their career, although still performing at a high level. Has that cast too much shade over the next generation of athletes to feed through, or do you feel like that's still very much underway, and you've got this new generation of athletes that are coming in behind?
Well, look at Morozov, Artyom Morozov.
Let's look at him.
Well, that's a good example. He's a new generation, but he's a steroid freak, right? I don't know how healthy it is for the mindset, but if we took away the Levans and the Saplenkovs, and how much will the sport suffer? I mean, Levan was head and shoulders above the competition. Saplenkov head and shoulders above the competition. Okay, so we lost a handful of guys. Okay, well, 90% of the rest of the field are still roiding as well. How evident is roiding when it comes to an arm fight, right? The strength gain is significant. Maybe the stamina in a certain regard is significant, but you can still see awesome fights at a world level with pure guys. Guys like Ivan Matyushenko. He's been competitive all the way, and he's got a lot of injuries, but all the way up until 2017, around about there. Terence, these are only guys that I know don't roid. Maybe Ongarbayev, maybe he doesn't roid, and he's still kicking ass. So we would have a very different ranking if everybody was honest. But we would still have our heroes. We would still have the technical geniuses. We would still have the brick outhouse looking guys. They might not be as ripped and vascular. But at least they will sweat less, like Jerry Catterick, you know what I'm saying?
And maybe they wouldn't be 55 years old and competing at the highest level as well.
Maybe.
That on that Jerry thing, that was one of the funniest things.
Jerry,
well, yeah, but Jerry is a sweaty guy. He is. He can't deny it. But when he came out for his match, he was saturated already. I don't know, maybe his warm up or something, but he was soaking wet, like before he'd even got to the table. And then during the match, it was like the table was so saturated.
Just dripping.
Yeah, it was more interesting for me to watch how much he was sweating than to watch the match. I was like, I can't believe it. And I was writing in the chat, how this dripping? It was like you just was literally stepped out of a shower,
out of a sauna, and onto the table. It was maybe that was his strategy. He wanted to slip the straps and world champion guy, but it's just an amusing thing for me to see that. But yeah, he actually had his singlet underneath because everyone wore the East versus West shirts, which he took off halfway through because it was melting off. He had a singlet underneath that wasn't like an East versus West one, and they were like, just let it go.
So is that match Rob Vigeant Jr. versus Brian Bowen ever going to happen? Because remember, RBJ is a very vocal anti-roid guy.
Yeah,
he is. Yeah, I don't know. I'd say probably not for a while. I think they're on different paths, different trajectories. Where RBJ is and where Ryan is. So,
is RBJ actively competing?
I haven't seen him compete for a while.
He's had long seasons of inactivity, but I don't know if his job is interfering or there's just not a juicy enough prize or whatever the case is. But
he seemed to be much more vocal on social media 6 or 8 months ago than he's certainly been recently. So
yeah, I haven't seen him compete for a while. Ryan obviously recently competed against Coach Ray, lost that match, but he is on. I think next weekend or this weekend he's competing.
I think he was suffering from anorexia at the time.
Yeah, he did have to weigh cut for that. Yeah, weighing under 90 kilos for. Which I think he dropped 8 or 9 kilos. I
thought it was good considering he was recovering from cancer. He looked terrible. Terrible. It was not. Yeah. So what did he drop down to?
He had to weigh in under 90 for the match, and I think he water cut the last 2 or 3 kilos on the day or the day before for the weigh-ins, and I think he weighed in 89.5 and then was back up to 94 or something for the match. But yeah, he's competing again. I think he's
2 weeks time.
Yeah, it's either this weekend or next weekend in Europe, and I think it's on Neil Pickup's
Arm Wars.
Arm Wars thing, and if he wins his match, he gets a rematch with Coach Ray. So
okay,
yeah, so that'd be interesting. Yeah, but
it's weird. what kind of precondition is that? But
Oh, no,
arm wars is,
because I think Coach Ray has a match, and if Coach Ray wins, then
They
they'll
come
meet
up
again.
against each other in the draw,
all right, awesome.
creating an intriguing encounter.
But I don't think he has to worry about weight at that point, so that might be a factor.
107 kilos.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah, we'll see. But yeah, have you seen the video that Ryan put out recently about his usage of PEDs?
Yeah. Oh, yes.
A little bit of it.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
long. It was a long one. It was like half an hour. But yeah, it was interesting to see, what he had used for certain matches and what had worked for him, what hadn't. And that, Coach Ray had specifically asked, I want you to be off of everything if you're going to compete against me. And Ryan did that. I think he said for nine months.
Coach Ray juiced up.
Yeah, Coach Ray was like, I've got my chance. I want you off. Give me the...
But how can he say he wants him off everything and not sponsored testing?
Has he said that?
No, but I mean, if I'm gonna testing isn't $5,000, is it?
It is expensive. Yeah.
When I don't know how these guys work through WADA or anything, but Inga and Terzi said testing athletes and they just spot tested was like $130.
Yeah, if you do like a basic urine test, but that's
not good enough.
It's very slight.
It's all urine tests.
Yeah. That'll get like cocaine usage and stuff like that. But if you need to it's blood test, then it has to be very specifically targeted for those compounds, and it has to measure to certain levels to catch the usage, and that is expensive.
Very expensive.
Yeah. Yes, unfortunately, but it hasn't come down in price either. So it's been that way for a long time.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So in a perfect world, would you have a league that was natural, and then for instance, in bodybuilding now you've got natural bodybuilding, you've got and then you've got the freaks, and so people know what's going on there, and
which one's more successful?
Yeah, well, that's exactly right. One draws attention to the sport, and the other is the also ran, I guess, in terms of the attention for the sport, because that's not what the sport has become. But I think if you rewind 40 years and you looked at the sport 40 years ago, it'd be a very different scenario. So maybe the natural element is more in keeping with the ethic of the sport originally. It poses interesting questions, and it's not something that we're going to get away from, because steroids don't get any more expensive, and then they don't become any less prolific and easily accessible for people. I
think with technology increases, that's just going to get to the point. I think the natural progression is just let them do whatever they want. Yeah, it's going to be too hard. The fact that you can manipulate your genes and you do crazy different things to your body. Yeah, it's like they're always playing catch up. If you're testing, it's like, well, good luck, because now how are you gonna stop people who generations of people with different genes that have predominantly way more muscle mass or strength naturally, that they were born with that, and it's like, well, they didn't get to choose that, so you're not allowed to compete. Well, that's not fair for anyone, but I think we will get to that point. I think within the next 20 years.
I doubt it. I don't think so.
No? What do you say?
It's too difficult to fiddle around with the genetic code, especially with nested codes. You fiddle around with one gene and something else goes wrong. They'll probably all get cancer before they become world champions.
It doesn't have to be
but it is a race. It is a race. So I become world champion before I get cancer. So is that the price?
Right.
Is that the price?
Win as you die.
I think what an amazing story it'll be to become world champion while I've got cancer.
Hey, there you go. Now we're talking.
No, it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be a genetic mutation. But in terms of not just that, but the chemicals that are out there, the masking agents, the ability to hide these different things. The people that are testing, that they are way behind. They are literally years behind what people are using, and that's why they're going back.
What's the solution, Les? What would you do if you were the king of the sport? Come on.
Prohibition has never worked. There's no solution.
So it's just let it go.
Oh, there's no solution.
Let it be.
I think the guy like an RVJ or an Ongobayev that knows his let's say, for example, or Terence or something. Terence would have been world champion. He actually was at WAF finals against some Ukrainian arm wrestler. I forgot what the guy's name was, and he just slammed him into a hook, and he thought he injured the guy, so he just let go. He was like, "Oh, you're right," and the guy just quickly pinned him. So that's Terence's attitude, but he could have easily been. And I know his routine. If he just the point I'm trying to bring across is you get guys that are genetically on that level. You know?
So we ban them. Okay, I got you. Right,
Yeah.
I'm with you now.
If you're over 6 foot, you're out.
Hookers on.
Hookers, none.
So yeah, no, I don't actually care. I'm just going to stay natural and have extra pride in beating a guy who I know is a roider.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and I don't even know who is a roider. So
you have no pride associated with your victory. Okay.
I do think it's headed that way. But they just go, we can't keep up.
Just let it go.
It's impossible.
Well, arm wrestling is so intriguing at this point in time because it's at that point of its evolution where it could just go really commercial really quickly, or it could just recede back into the darkness and as a curiosity, as a sporting curiosity in a bar sport. I've got the feeling its trajectory is going to be increasingly mainstream, and in which case, if you do want to attract sponsors to a sport, then there are certain standards associated with that, or like bodybuilding, the sponsors understand the game, and I think this is probably more the point. The sponsors understanding that, well, if I'm selling puppy dogs and ice cream, then maybe I don't want to be associated with bodybuilding. But if I'm selling creatine and Megamass 3000, then
You can't get any better than that.
it's the highest number.
That's right. Doesn't go higher than 3,000.
Then
I remember before the millennium it was 2000.
it was 2000, and 3000 is the natural evolution. So an extra 1,000 calories.
Of sugar.
sugar.
The bucket is actually sugar.
Yeah,
You eat the bucket when you finish.
I heard it was Ben Weeder's scaly skin, just a little bit into the mix, and that was what you got.
Fantastic.
So Ben as well, not Joe Weeder.
Yeah. Why not? It was both.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit of both.
The
You didn't know
role
which one
of
you'd
the-
get.
The Weeder world.
You were like, oh, this is Joe. Yeah.
That was flavour. They experimented.
Joe flavour or Ben flavour. That's great.
So I mean, it's if you're got products, or you've got a business, or you've got a brand that's aligned, then there isn't any problem. So. And perhaps that's where the UFC, decided it was going to be chasing those big name sponsors.
Yeah, but they sold it for $4 billion.
Seemed to work out for them.
Yeah, I think it worked out pretty well.
Yeah, it's going great.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they don't care about saturation, Matt. They don't want to hear it
They don't want to hear
from
it
you
from me. Dana White would literally tell me, if you don't like it, don't watch it.
Don't watch it.
Yeah.
And
I'd be like,
no, I want to keep watching it, please.
that's
please
right.
let me.
It's okay.
Don't ban me.
It's okay, Uncle Dana. I'm sorry, Uncle Dana. Yeah. No, he's good. I love Dana White. He's fantastic. He is. He's awesome. Speaks his mind. He's one of those guys. He's very, perfect guy to run the company. I mean, he'd tell you to screw yourself if you don't like what he's done. It's like, well, too bad. I'm doing it.
Is it part of the problem with UFC perhaps that what comes after Dana? And most sports like a Joe Weeder, for instance, you get these big personalities that kind of are so synonymous with the sport that when they do pass, or they go, or they move on, then there isn't somebody else. And this is part of, I feel like, maybe the dilemma with arm wrestling at some stage. We're in the golden era of arm wrestling in some respects, because we've still got all the big names of arm wrestling that have been kind of around for the last couple of decades, and what happens next? Who is that next generation? Where are these personalities coming from, and how did they develop themselves in the sport, and develop their own personal brands and find a way? Yeah,
it is interesting. And
John Brzezinski is 84 years old, and juiced up to the gills, and
he's
pulling
still
people
in the top 10.
He's still top 3 on his third comeback.
That's right.
Yeah,
it's he's in a wheelchair. He's like comes out, he's standing, still pins you.
Just holds you in a hook for a little while before he does it, and then just leans over. But somebody just
falls back into
pushes the armchair
puts a
over,
blanket over him.
wheels him back.
It's so good. He probably would do that. It's like his whole body's frail, but his forearms just fucking mega.
Still top 10.
Yeah, still top 10. Yeah, still taking on the latest world champion. But yeah, it is interesting. You said this before that the average age of the top 10 is like over 50.
Yeah,
which is insane. And yeah, where is the next generation? Hopefully, there is people to replace these guys as they do start to retire. Or they start to fall away at some point. Age will, eventually will catch up with you. But yeah, hopefully we do have enough superstars in the works that will rise to the ranks and start. But there isn't. I mean, how many of these, say, 30-year-old, 25-year-old superstars are there in the arm wrestling world? Not many. There's a couple that you've mentioned earlier, but
and how do they find space?
Yeah,
What makes a superstar? Once the old guard retires, the new superstars just move into that vacuum automatically. I don't
know. I think they've got to have something special, otherwise the sport just
like
goes.
a YouTube channel or a practice table champion like Aramis Gasparini, and then he,
it doesn't have the personality, I don't think.
Well, I mean, people rate him highly and want to see him destroy Matt Mask. You know what I'm saying? They want to see him destroy Devon. It doesn't matter what the guy does. He can be the biggest arsehole. He can still spawn a following.
He will spawn a much bigger superstar following like Devon and John with the off the table side of things.
John is got his through, the mileage that he got out of the development of the sport, and Devon got his through his charisma.
So I mean, who's going to replace it?
Yeah,
Devon's going to be around for a long time still.
I hope so. Yeah. If you had to face Devon, what would you do? What would your tactics be?
My technique.
What are your tactics? Let's say you had the same strength level. You're absolutely.
It would be whatever he decided it would be.
I know. He would destroy all of us, like no matter what. But let's say for a fun hypothetical that you were same strength level, something or another. Would you have a tactic that you think this is what I would do in a match?
No, I just slam sideways as fast as I can in a top roll. I don't.
No more thought given to it than that.
Just YOLO it. There's no point. I'll have the Travis Bajan mentality of hit my own arm open.
Right.
There's nothing to it. So what are you going to do? Even if I got close enough to his level where I thought, all right, maybe I've got a chance, are you going to fool around and experiment? No, you're just going to go for your bread and butter move. And you're just going to smack it as hard as you can. People like to say traditionally Devon is maybe not the fastest, or maybe that dude's fast enough. Come on. And in some cases, in certain angles, he doesn't even have to be fast. He can gather you from the edge of the pad. Anyway, I think he doesn't get as much respect as he deserves, Devon, because a lot of the guys are like, oh, you talk a big game, but that's just part of the game,
Yeah.
If he's running the brand that he's running, obviously he's the tallest tree has gathered the most win. But I think he rejected the super match that Engen proposed to him for East versus West 5 or whatever it is with Prudnik. He rejected it. Did he reject it or not?
I don't know. I haven't heard.
He didn't tell me. Did he message you?
He's rang you. He's never rang me.
He gave me a call and asked me advice. No, I think he rejected that, but who knows where he's going to go with his recovery or whatever the case may be. But we would like to see him compete more, wouldn't we?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But sparingly. I think 3 times a year at most. You can't overuse Devon Lorette. If you do, it's not going to be as special every time you see him. You've got to be very careful about how you use your superstars.
And then you've got maybe 10 more matches over the next 5 years, 4 or 5 years that you get to really look forward to before you.
Yeah, because if he's pulling every
goes
weekend,
off peak.
If he's pulling every weekend, this is great. I get to see him every weekend, and then it's like it loses its luster, it loses its power, it loses its excitement very quickly. And you're like, oh, did you see the match? No, I didn't even. Who did he go against? Like, as opposed to months and months of build up. To a really exciting moment.
How many super matches did he have last year? 1.
Last year we had John Brezink.
Wasn't Berserker at the beginning of this year? It was the end of last
Are
year.
you saying last year?
Yeah, last
In
year.
the last year. Oh, last year.
Last
not
year.
not over the last year.
Last year.
I'd have to look it up. I don't know. A couple, not many.
Yeah. Anyway, so it's already like that. Come on, man.
But that's what I'm saying. You can't overuse it, and,
But
and it's probably
he
why.
is, in terms of some of the top guys, a little bit more inactive and does pick his battles a little bit more shrewdly.
It's very clever.
Maybe maybe he can get more money out of it that way. I don't know, but I would like to see him actually go up against more Europeans, just like any other arm wrestling fan. You know what I'm saying?
He won't.
I truly believe he is in that top 5 range.
Yeah,
But
he would hurt himself to do that. I think
he would hurt himself.
it would hurt his brand.
His brand.
Yeah, his specialty, his novelty, his attraction. If you're seeing him multiple times constantly, especially if he's got the opportunity where he might get beaten, that I mean, it's like Conor McGregor fighting once a year, but everyone watches that fight.
Yeah.
If Conor was fighting every week, it's same guy, same ability, but
Maybe.
loses the charisma.
And
Not
last,
charisma, but the attraction.
before we go, who's looming large on your horizon? Have you got your eyes on an opponent or
Taron.
Taron?
First of all, I need to sort out this left-hand ranking. This
Right.
guy is just
Yep.
picked up.
It's
Yeah.
a very easy reason. He just won the state titles on left hand.
You had him as that at the end of last year already.
Yeah,
When I
that was just to annoy you.
Spanked him. Taron.
So Taron Broad is going down.
Oh look, I mean, I've got Hamza, I've got Tyler, Hitman Tyler,
Yeah.
and Tim. Tim wanted it at the end of the year, so he's got time to come off his cut and prepare and what I don't know what.
Yep.
But so I want to obviously go up because coming back from stupid injury and inactivity and burst back disc and this and that. I was tired of it all. But
You need steroids. Yeah.
You ever heard of them? Mega Mass
Mega
3000. Oh, I got there. I was half a second. Half a second. Yeah,
No, but
that's youth energy there.
I need to take care of home before I. Obviously, I want Bowen.
Yeah.
Ryan Bowen. So hang on, that's a call out.
Well,
I want Ryan Bowen. That's how it
Well,
be edited.
should we call him now?
Yeah, obviously Ryan doesn't care.
Yeah, let's put him on the phone. He's somewhere in Europe at the moment. He's in Roma or something.
Yeah.
He doesn't care. I mean, but it's. I'll take care of Taron first. And Taron is a real arm wrestler, in my opinion. He's been stuck. He's stuck to it so consistently for so long.
Yeah.
I think we've seen some of his true potential.
Yeah.
He obviously still has some room to improve.
Yeah.
But this is he's got almost that elite strength in that right arm of his, So I respect that, and I will enjoy pinning that. But I need to I disrespected him when I came back from my year and a month whatever layoff. I said, just give me 6 weeks. Well, this is obviously not enough. I lost 3-1, right?
Yeah.
But I think with me not doing that stupid job anymore, if I find some other job or whatever, but please hire me. Someone.
Anybody looking for a professional arm
A
wrestler?
professional geologist.
Or a geologist, whatever.
Yeah.
Or a gardener. But
Same thing.
so I think I want Taron somewhere end of November, beginning of December. It gives me 3 months just to
Yep.
get my joints solid again. And I think, and I hope he picks up weight because he went down to 82 or something for the Queensland thing. Right?
Yeah,
Or the New South
under
Wales.
80. Yeah, he went under 80 kilos for that.
Yeah, so he's 82 now. But I mean, he's still dangerous at that weight. But
Yeah. He's only 5'2".
well, at the table, everyone's the same height.
That's right.
But so that's it. I'm not looking past him. Just need to smack him, and then I'll look abroad.
Okay. Then Ryan Bowen. Okay. Gotcha. So-
Or maybe it's beat Taron in a top roll and then beat him on a hook.
Ooh, that a press to finish off.
Anyway,
So is there anybody on the screen that you couldn't beat?
well, pretty much all of them.
Yep.
I mean, there's some names that I don't know, but I can't beat any of these guys.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I can beat Jules, I guess.
Okay.
And maybe probably these light guys, but I mean, that's embarrassing. I'm 92 kilograms. I don't want to be I can beat that little guy.
Yeah.
But these guys are all solid, man. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, but we expect Taron to probably beat the 4-way showdown.
Yep.
To probably win that. But as for the rest of them, they are just a little bit of a cut above our.
So we saw Taron come up against Josh Parker in the I think it was New South Wales titles and win comfortably there.
He did lose the first round
very quick off the mark. Josh was.
On the left hand. She ended up getting back, but he did win on the right hand. Both. Yeah.
So did very well there. And then we got Andy and Lockie. Not sure how that's going to play out. What's your insights there?
Yeah, well, Lachlan did very well just recently in the Queensland state titles. Andy, when he did compete, the last time I saw him compete was...
Andy's on the comeback trail, isn't he?
Yeah, the last time I saw him compete was in the over the top tournament, but he was sick. He was sick the day before, and I think it was like when he got on the table to compete, he was just trying to stop himself from fainting, like literally. And there was one of the matches he had where it was like a drawn out match, and he was sort of in a position, and he was looking up at the roof. And I was talking to him afterwards. I was like, "Oh, that was a crazy match." He goes, "I can't remember it." Just all I was seeing was white spots. Because I was on my way down. I was falling. But yeah, he was sick in that match. But that'll be a very competitive match. And we've spoken about Brett Coots before.
Brett Coots, yes. Well, and that one's on the left. So so that's going to be very, very interesting, isn't it? So you'd say Brett's the favourite going into that on left?
That is a tough one because Brett's natural strong arm is his left arm. But Mario has been on a tear the last probably 18 months. And
is the winning streak about to end?
Well, he did lose in the Queensland state titles.
Did he?
Yeah, he came third to another man who is competing, Fatali and Lachlan Carpenter. So, but yeah, Mario and Brett, that'll be an amazing match. And then you've got Brett and Fatali on the right. That'll be an incredible match. Fatali having just recently won the Queensland state titles and having come back off of a bicep surgery from a couple of years ago. He did quite well in the over-the-top tournament as well. That was sort of his first testing ground. Did very well. But yeah, recently winning the state titles at Queensland, and now he's going to be competing against one of the veterans of the sport in the heavyweight division, and Brett Coots. So it should be an exciting match on 27th of August.
Yeah, all will be revealed in just a matter of a week or so's time. So really, really looking forward to being there and soaking it all up and seeing what the results are going to be. So very exciting there for Garage Wars 2.0 on the 27th of August in Melbourne. So if you happen to be in Melbourne and you do love arm wrestling, then make your way down there, and you might even see me. I'll be down there as well. Matt, you going to make it?
We'll
see.
Know.
It's unannounced.
It's a TBA.
It's a TBA.
Yeah.
Good. Well, we'll leave that one out there just in case anybody's really keen to see Matt and might just go buy a ticket just in case.
Yeah, we'll see.
Matt Connolly comes along. He'll be signing Matt Connolly.
That's right. I'll be double biceping.
Double bicep T-shirts.
For free. I do that anyway. But
he will sign your bicep, as a matter of fact.
I'll sign your bicep. You don't get to sign mine. It's $5 a look.
And Laz will continue to call out Ryan Bowen until he responds. So really looking forward to that. Yeah. So the big matchup coming up in 2023.
That's right. Garage Wars 6.0.
I'll take him left at the beginning of next year confidently.
Yeah.
Ryan Bowen, but I don't think he does even compete.
Doesn't train left at all. Yeah.
Train up.
Yeah.
Damn. That's my bubble. But halfway through next year, I'll challenge him right anyway. If I can get over Taron, then that's because you want to take everyone on under 100 kgs.
You want to keep working the way through. Yeah. Yep. Love it.
Exciting.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, there it is, another episode of the Daily Combat Podcast. Please thank our guest, Las Botha, and we'll look forward to bringing you more of the Daily Combat Podcast very, very soon.
Thank you.